I think we have everyone, Madam President, and it is 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Marquardt. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Mr. McLaughlin, could we please start with a roll call?
Ms. Beckman,
Here.
Ms. Schaefer,
Here.
Mr. Salmon,
Here.
Mrs. White,
Here.
Mrs. McCune,
Here.
Mrs. Richmond,
Here.
Mrs. Korn,
Here.
Mr. Markarian,
Here.
Mr. Syatt,
Here.
Mrs. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. And once again, welcome, everyone. The board has already met in executive session and has saluted the flag during that executive session. So at this point, I'd like to welcome you and remind everyone this is a regular meeting of the Board of Education of Bernards Township. Notice the time and the place of the meeting was provided, and copies of that resolution were forwarded to the official newspapers as designated by the Board of Education and to the Township Clerk, and a copy of the notice was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education offices as in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Due to the public health emergency in the state of New Jersey, as declared in Executive Order 103, the board will be suspending its normal meeting procedures this evening and conducting this virtual meeting. Directions for accessing the virtual meeting would normally be on the website, but hopefully you all received the notification this evening that our website host is still not able to help us unless something has changed in the last little while. We very much welcome input from the public. Because this is a virtual meeting, public comment will be handled in one of three ways. Method one, when you are ready to make a public comment, join the Board of Education meeting via the Zoom link posted on the website that you were directed to this evening. Please plan for your participation by turning on your camera and microphone, dressing appropriately, maintaining a proper background setting for your camera's view, having a quiet space, and muting the YouTube live stream of the Board of Education meeting when you are speaking so that there is no feedback with your participation in the Zoom meeting. You will be placed in the queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make a public comment. Once you see that you are admitted to the Zoom call, it will be your turn to make your public comment. Please begin by stating your name and your address, your full name first and last. After making your public comment, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person may enter and make their public comment. I just want to remind everyone about the Zoom method. If you're just joining to, or if you're just tuning in to watch the meeting, that is done on YouTube and not through the Zoom link. The assumption is if you are in the Zoom waiting room, that is because you would like to make a public comment, which we are eager to hear if you would like to do so. But frequently we have folks who inadvertently end up in the Zoom waiting room who do not have any intention of making a public comment, but are just tuning into the meeting. So it's just a quick reminder. Public comment method two, when you're ready to make a public comment, join this is the dial-in version, pardon me, using the same Zoom, the Zoom dial-in meeting ID and number, a phone number and meeting ID. Is that posted this evening for everyone, Nick? I'm sorry. With the change, are people able to see that? Yes, I'm seeing.
Yes, it's on the alternative website.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
So then please, once again, plan for your participation by having a quiet space and muting the YouTube live stream in the background to avoid feedback. You'll be placed in the queue and admitted to the meeting when it is your turn to make your public comment. Once you see that you're admitted, you will be invited to make that comment. Please begin by stating your first and last name and your address. Once your public comment is complete, please exit the Zoom meeting so that the next person can make their comment. If the first two methods are not available, or if one or both fail, you may make your public comment by sending an email to btconnect@bernardsboe.com or texting your comment to 908-292-3047. Use public comment in the email subject or the beginning of the message. indicate your first and last name in any written comments, as your public comment will not be included if you cannot provide your first and last name and your address. Regardless of which method, public comments are limited to approximately 3 minutes if read aloud. Individuals are permitted a maximum of 1 public comment during both agenda and non-agenda item sections of the agenda. Public comments are submitted by method 1 and 2 will be processed first, and then comments submitted by method 3. The board reserves the right to limit the length of time. As we've mentioned in all the previous meetings over the last several months, we are going to keep that to 45 minutes for both sessions of public comment. That seems to have been working very well. No public comments will be accepted before 7 p.m. or after item 22 on the agenda. These public comment sections of the agenda are not structured as question and answer periods, although your question may be, or your concern may be addressed if there is an opportunity to do so. With that, I think we can move on to our student representative, Juliet Knoll. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Hello. Since the last board meeting, Ridge has transitioned into the second semester, which is very exciting for seniors in particular. The past weeks have been mostly characterized by the slight disruptions due to the snowstorm, but mostly I've seen kids happy to play and sled in the snow or begrudgingly help shovel. From students, I've heard some concern about the accessibility of music programs once Ridge transitions to the drop schedule, because these electives become more difficult to balance with other classes. Besides that, much of the same planning for spring events is taking place without updates currently. Thank you.
Sorry. Didn't anticipate a phone call in the middle of that there, sorry. So our next item is the statements from our candidates for the board vacancy. Ms. Fox, do we have those folks in the waiting room?
I believe we do. Do you have a particular order you want me to let them in?
I think we have them on the agenda in alphabetical order, so we'll go with that. So I think we are expecting to hear from Ruchika Hira first.
Okay, I'm admitting her now.
Good evening, Ruchika, and thank you so much for joining us. I believe you've been prepped for how this is going to work. Thanks for seamlessly joining us. If you'd like to just jump right in and make your statement, we would very much appreciate hearing from you.
That's to unmute.
We need you to just unmute yourself. Thanks for welcome.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am aware that the board members know a little bit about me already, as this is not my first time seeking a seat on the Board of Ed, and my resume and statement were already submitted in advance. However, for those of you attending the meeting virtually and who do not know me, my name is Ruchika Hira. Academically, I graduated from New York University as an NYU Honor Scholar. I have a Juris Doctorate from Rutgers School of Law. After law school, I completed a one-year judicial clerkship, and I have several certifications in mediation and conflict resolution, including a certification in mediating disputes from the Harvard Negotiation Institute. I am an attorney who specializes in complex family law matters and a pro bono attorney from MANVI, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to end all forms of violence against women. I'm a New Jersey native. My husband is a radiologist, and we have been married for 15 years. We have 2 children, a kindergartner at Oak Street and a 6th grader at William Annan. My family moved to Basking Ridge several years ago because we were drawn to a community that values public education and prides itself on its stellar academic reputation. I sit here before you today making this statement as a parent who wants to be a part of this board. A team, as I see it, who I know wants nothing but the best for our students. In these challenging times, the board is being faced with very difficult decisions and is constantly having to deal with a fluid, shifting public health situation that requires members to monitor data as it emerges and respond at the right moment, at the right time, in order to protect our students, teachers, staff, and families of all. I want to be a part of the process, the dialogue, and I believe that my life experiences, my perspective, and my skill set could be of value to our board. I am hardworking, open-minded, solution-oriented, but most of all, I'm fiercely dedicated. I care about our students, and I genuinely want their school experience, including my own children's experience, to be a positive one, not just academically, but socially and emotionally as well, as these are fundamental years that they're going to remember as they go through life. That is why, and I quote the Dalai Lama, "When educating the minds of our youth, we must not forget to educate their hearts." It goes without say, there's a lot going on within our school district, just like every other school district in New Jersey and throughout the nation. Getting our students, teachers, and staff back into school safely is obviously the biggest challenge facing the board right now. And I believe as a district, we need to continue to do whatever we need to do to create the safest environment that we can to get our students physically back in. Our community deserves normalcy, and I am of the opinion that we are not going to get back to normal until we get our students back in school. Learning and developing academically and socially against the backdrop of a global pandemic has been challenging. For each student, for each family, the experience has been different. As a board, we cannot lose sight of that, and we need to continue to find resources to make certain that our students and the families in our district stay connected. I strongly believe that communication is the key, and I do believe that our board is taking every step necessary to accomplish the goal of getting our students back into school safely and as quickly as possible. If selected to fill this seat, my goal would be to remain on the board for as long as I am able to. There is certainly a learning curve, but again, I am dedicating to putting in the time and energy that is needed to meet the demands of the position. I have flexibility with my schedule as I am in private practice, and my firm fully supports the members of our firm being actively involved in our community. In fact, one of the members of my firm is currently a Board of Ed member of his town, while another attorney is in my firm as a mayor. As for my family, especially my husband, my involvement with the Board of Education means as much to him as it does to me. I am fully committed and hopeful that you will consider me for the seat. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Ruchika. We appreciate you taking the time to share all that with everyone who's tuning in this evening. At this time, we are going to ask our next candidate to come forward and do as you have, I believe. Do you have instructions for what will happen next?
Yes, to just stay on. I guess I will leave the meeting and then I was watching it on my other screen, the Board of Ed meeting. Is that fine? So I'll leave right now and then I'll get back on if I have to.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Fox, do we have our next candidate, Farine?
We do. I am admitting him now.
Hi, Farine, welcome. Let us know when you can hear us.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Yes, we can.
Excellent. Well, thank you. My name is Farheen Kader, and I'm excited and humbled to be considered for a seat on the board today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a proud parent of a second grader at OSS and a sixth grader at WAMS. I studied engineering at MIT and then got an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I've been living in New Jersey for quite some time now. I started my career at Colgate-Palmolive as an engineer now over 20 years ago, and I was based out of Piscataway and Morristown. And then for the last 10 years, I've been working at BASF in the Florham Park area as a general manager. Currently, I run the personal care business for BASF, which means I help companies make liquid hand soap, hand sanitizers, shampoos, conditioners to help keep the community safe. Now, I am not new to public service in the education sphere. For many, many years, I've worked as an alumni interviewer for both MIT and for the University of Pennsylvania. And for the last several years, I've been investing in building schools in underprivileged communities to help improve access to education for girls. If there's one thing that I want you to remember about me, It's that I am passionate about the power of education, and I'm eager to serve the children, the parents, and the community at large as a board member. Now, there were 4 topics we were asked to address today. The first is why we want to be a part of this board. And first and foremost, I believe in the importance of quality education. It is the most important agent for change and human progress. I grew up on Long Island and I attended public school there. That school taught me or challenged me academically, it challenged me artistically, and it challenged me athletically. I also got access to strong role models there. And as a result, I was able to go to some of the best schools in the world that I mentioned before. Now, that being said, I moved to Basking Ridge about 4 years ago. And what I can say is that I found home, and I plan on staying here for quite a long time. And I'll highlight one recent experience that really consolidated that for me. A week ago with the snowstorm, I was out there shoveling by myself, trying to get the driveway clean. And 2 of my neighbors saw me struggling, and they immediately brought over their snow blowers and started to clean my driveway for me. That was amazing. That is what this community is about. It's about neighbors showing each other compassion, care, and respect. Now, I can't return the favor by cleaning someone else's driveway, but what I can do is invest my time and my passion for education in the school board. And that's why I'm here. The second question we were asked to address is what we think the board does. So I think that's relatively simple. The board doesn't run the schools. It provides guidance on how they're run. So what does that mean to me? It means policy development. It means ensuring that our schools deliver the high quality standard of education that we are renowned for. And if there's any gaps that are addressed, it's our job to help fill those gaps. Where the board is also responsible for effective school management through the superintendent and the administrators. And it's the board's job to make sure that the superintendent has the resources it needs to be successful, but at the same time, to hold the superintendent and the other administrators accountable for delivering that success. And finally, the board's responsibility is to ensure there's a forum for dialogue, just like today. By ensuring that our schools are run well and resourced appropriately, we give our children the ability to dream that the sky is the limit. The third topic, my ability to serve. So as I mentioned before, I have young children in the school district, and I plan on staying here at least until they graduate. And so if appointed today, my intention would be to continue to serve for a very long time. Fortunately, I have flexibility at work and can work around the schedule of planned committee meeting schedules and trainings. I don't see that as a problem at all. Now, the fourth topic that we were asked to address actually is the most interesting one for me. It's what do we believe are the biggest challenges that face the board today? Without a doubt, COVID-19 and our response to this pandemic, it is the most important topic today, and it will be for the foreseeable future. First and foremost, I appreciate the very thoughtful approach that this board has taken thus far. However, as recent as the last board meeting, it was very clear that there are as many opinions of the board's response as there are people in the community. And honestly, that's okay. Healthy, constructive dialogue is the foundation for a functioning society. However, as an educated community, I believe that we must take a fact-based scientific approach to our decisions. We must heed the guidelines of the CDC for reopening, for quarantining, and for managing the pandemic responsibly. Now, although I have a background in science and engineering, and I believe that science is at the core.
Excuse me 1 second, ma'am. We had a 5-minute time limit, so I just wanted to ask the board president.
I think we're coming up on the end. So if everyone's agreeable, I think we can probably just allow Farheen to continue.
Okay.
Sure, I apologize. I thought I was told 10 minutes, so I apologize for that mistake. No worries. So in the end, I believe that the biggest challenges that the board face, COVID-19, the mental health crisis that is the parallel crisis to COVID-19, And finally, how do we manage our budget as a board when you've got all of these crises to manage and still run a highly functioning school district? So if there's one thing that you remember about me, passion for public education, my commitment to this community, and my desire to serve our children and our parents and the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farheen. We appreciate you joining us. The board is now going to adjourn into executive session to consider our two fine candidates that we have here this evening. For the public, anyone watching at home, we just want you to know that we will do this as quickly, but of course thoroughly as we can, but we do not anticipate being gone any longer than 8 p.m., but we could be back sooner. So stay tuned for that cliffhanger. Everyone on the board, if we can go back to our...
Can we have a motion to adjourn into executive?
I'm sorry, Mr. McLaughlin, Mrs. Korn and Mr. Salmon.
Thank
For a
you.
second. All right, so we'll go into executive session and we will return as soon as we are finished with our discussion and our candidate. Oh, okay.
He's here.
Welcome. Oh, great. Okay. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, members of the public. We appreciate your patience as we considered our two candidates, both of whom are very impressive, as I'm sure you'll agree. Having had the opportunity to discuss it as a board, I think we are ready to make a nomination. So would someone like to go ahead and proceed and make a nomination? Mrs. Beckman.
I'd like to nominate Ruchika Hira to the board.
And would someone like to second that nomination?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. All right, are there any other nominations at this time? Okay, so seeing none, I will close nominations and ask Mr. McLaughlin to do a roll call.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. So before we bring Ruchika back in, I just would like to say to Farheen, thank you so much for coming out for the appointment. We really appreciate that time and energy you put into sharing everything about yourself with us. And we truly hope that you will come back again at another point in time where there's an opportunity to become a member of the board. With that, Ms. Fox, do we have
Yes, we do.
Ruchika in the waiting room?
We do.
Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to administering the oath of office. Is that correct?
I've admitted her.
Welcome back, Ruchika. Congratulations. We're pleased to share with you that you were just elected. And yes, congratulations. We're pleased to have you to fill out the full complement of our board of 9. I think at this time, Mr. McLaughlin is going to take over with your oath of office.
Good evening and welcome.
Welcome back, Ruchika. Congratulations. We're pleased to share with you that you were just elected. And yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
We're pleased to have you to fill out the full complement of our board of 9. I think at this time, Mr. McLaughlin is going to take over with your oath of office.
I think that the YouTube is still running in the background on Ruchika's computer. I think she's not in this.
Let me get out of that.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Better.
Good evening. Do you have the oath of office that I asked my administrative assistant to email to both of the candidates as a preliminary
Yes, I have.
for this? Do you have that?
I do.
Okay. I'm not going to try to read it and then have you follow along with me, because it would just be easier, and for the sake of the presentation to the public in this format, if you just read the oath of office as we have given it to you, and that will, and I will serve to witness that you did successfully read that oath into the minutes of the meeting.
Happy to do so. I,
Thank you.
Ruchika Espira, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state under the authority of the people. I, Ruchika Espira, do solemnly swear that I have possessed the qualifications prescribed by law for the office of member of a Board of Education, and that I am not disqualified as a voter pursuant to RS 19:4-1, nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime or offense listed in NJS 18A:12-1, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. I
Thank
would ask
you.
that when you have an opportunity in the next day or so, could you just sign this and then send a scanned copy of it back to my administrative assistant, Ms. Nichols?
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my honor.
Congratulations and welcome to the board. Hopefully you can see everyone. Everyone is giving applause.
Yes, I see everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we are on to our next item, which is the board presentation, is Mr. Syed beginning that? Is that?
Well, Mr. Syed is going to assist me in the presentation by
Alright.
sharing his screen and advancing the PowerPoint.
Okay, so Ms. Fox, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Syed.
Sure, let's just make sure you can see this.
I see it. Does everyone else?
I'm going to do in presentation mode. How's that?
Looks great.
Okay,
Looks great.
wonderful.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome, Ruchika. It's going to be nice to work with you. I look forward to meeting you. I hope you're all doing well this evening. I wanted to just mention that this presentation will be posted on the district website in the morning. Hopefully it will be back up running, so that you can review it further, as well as the things that I am linking to the site for further review. I would also suggest that, if you have any questions along the way, you might want to write them down and I can answer them at the end. Some of the presentation may answer your questions. So I'm here to talk to you about state and local assessments over the years of 2019 and 2020 and the work that we're doing on this critically important subject. But before I start, there are a few things I wanted to say about the subject of tonight's talk. First, this report, the focus of this report is teaching and learning, which is certainly what we do every day. But I will also speak about the relationship that engagement has in the overall learning process. This is critically important and really cannot be overstated. It is certainly what has had the greatest impact on student learning at this time. I will not spend a lot of time tonight, however, speaking directly to another tremendously important subject for all of us, and that is our students' mental health and well-being. We all know that it is absolutely tied directly to a student's ability to learn, and without a doubt, the pandemic has impacted that tremendously. So while it is not the primary focus of tonight's presentation, that does not mean that it is not also our greatest priority, or that we are not working on that every single day. We all are greatly concerned with our students' mental health and well-being. In fact, this will be the subject of a separate presentation in April, where Ms. Smith, the Director of School Counseling, can dive more deeply into those trends and the work we are doing in that area. The second thing I wanted to mention to you tonight is that we are all living through historic and difficult times. but I work with amazingly dedicated professionals at all levels: support staff, nurses, counselors, teachers, administrators, and board members who think and work and worry about our students every single day, all the time. We will not always agree on the solutions, but we all care. Tonight, I will talk to you about our most recent state assessment results as required by regulation, and I will share with you the ways we are monitoring student learning and some of the specific adjustments we have made to support our students. At this first link, you will find the last presentation I made to the Board of Education on October 14th, 2019, where I reviewed the state assessment results from the spring 2019 administration of the NJSLA. This was our most recent results because the spring 2020 NJSLA assessments were canceled. So the NJSLA, or the New Jersey Student Learning Assessments, next slide, please, replaced the PARCC assessment in 2018. Students across grades 3 through 11 are assessed annually in the area of English language arts and mathematics and measure our students' progress towards college and career readiness. The assessments are aligned to grade level content standards in each area. It's a computer-based assessment and 2 scores are provided. There is a scale score which ranges from 650 to 850 points and a performance level which indicates whether or not students have met grade level expectations and are therefore considered to be on track for college and career. A 4 or a 5 on this assessment indicates readiness. So you can find your child's score report on the parent portal, which I will show you shortly. And you can find some additional information about the assessment and your child's performance on a link provided on the same score report. Linked here at the bottom of this slide is some specific information about the content of the test at each grade level in each subject. While I'm not going to review the entire report I gave last fall tonight, I will summarize our findings as were shared at that board meeting. In summary, we outperformed the state in all grade levels, particularly in the percentage of students who score a level 4 or 5. We noted some considerable growth in grade 7 for mathematics and grades 7, 9, and 10 in ELA. We also saw increases in some of our subgroups, specifically our economically disadvantaged students and our students with disabilities. Each year, we also analyze the assessment results and identify areas that warrant further exploration. Those are listed here and include our efforts to target specific subgroup populations, including our English language learners and our special education students. Grade 8 math and Algebra 1 at the high school are also areas of focus based on these most recent assessment results. Many of the interventions you see listed here have been successfully implemented, although it should be noted that some of the in-person trainings we had scheduled for last spring have been delayed until we can provide that training in person. The state assessment requirement for graduation has been in flux for the past few years, so I wanted to update you with the latest information we now have. This first link includes the requirement for the class of 2021 and 2022, as was reported last fall. But Executive Order 214, issued on January 11th of this year, has waived the state assessment requirement for the class of 2021. We do not have any information on any other grade level state assessment graduation requirements at this time. Right now, we are scheduled to administer the NJSLA in the spring of 2021. Linked here is the Burnett Township School District assessment calendar, where we have posted tentative dates for the implementation of the NJSLA. But note that we are awaiting guidance from the NJDOE, Department of Education, particularly as it relates to a virtual administration of the assessment. Beyond those most recent state assessment results, we use a number of other assessments to monitor student learning. I will be sharing information about some of those results, as well as how we are using assessment as a tool to support student learning. In particular, I will share the results of our fall implementation of the MAP assessment. The district has used the MAP assessment since the spring of 2012. You can get more information about the company and the assessment at this first link. We administer the assessment to students in grades 2 through 8 in reading and mathematics at different times in the school year. The MAP assessment has been an important tool for us to measure student growth across grade levels over recent years, where the NJSLA assessment has been in transition from the PARCC assessment. This year was no different due to the cancellation of the spring NJSLA. For those of you who are less familiar with MAP and our use of it over the last several years, I have linked NWEA's Family Toolkit, as well as my most recent presentation on MAP that you can review for more information. Our teachers use assessment to make instructional decisions every single day. There are 3 categories of assessment used in the classroom, including diagnostic, which happens before the learning, formative, which happens during the learning, and summative, which happens when the learning has concluded. They are each important and play a role in teaching and learning. The NJSLA is considered a summative assessment. We use the MAP assessment as a diagnostic before the learning. We also use it as one measure for some placement decisions, and we use it to evaluate our program and support curriculum revisions as warranted. So MAP stands for Measures of Academic Progress and was developed by the Northwest Evaluation Association. Here's some important background about MAP to help interpret the scores I will share. So this is also a computer-based assessment. It is adaptive, which means that the questions adjust as the students progress through the assessment. So questions become more challenging as the students get the questions right, and it becomes less challenging when they are incorrect. The assessment is untimed because the primary objective of the assessment is for students to demonstrate what they know and can do relative to particular content standards. The MAP assessment measures typical growth. So a student's score does not tell us how they are doing relative to how they should be doing. Rather, it tells us how they are doing in comparison to their grade level peers. The scores are reported on a continuum called the RIT scale. RIT stands for Rosh Unit, and Rosh is the person who invented the scale. So as you can see on this diagram, the scores are independent of a student's grade level and are instead directly correlated to their mastery of content across all grade levels. So a student's score of 200 in grade 1 would be the equivalent to a student's score of 200 in grade 6. That 200 would tell us the student's mastery of content at that level of difficulty. This is particularly helpful in showing us a student's growth over time, as the scores mean essentially the same thing from year to year. On the right, you can see what MAP specifically assesses, and these are directly tied to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards in ELA and mathematics. Note here that the typical growth ranges from between 3 and 12 points annually. Students tend to show greater growth in the lower grades and would be closer to the 10 to 12 point range annually. And as students move into the upper grades, grades 6 through 8, the typical growth would be more in the 3 to 6 point range. This fall, we made some adjustments as a result of the spring closure, as well as our learning environment in the fall. We pushed the testing window back by 2 weeks to provide students with time to transition back to school. In addition, we tested students remotely and in school. We adjusted who tested as well. Students in grades 3 through 8 were assessed in the mathematics MAP test, but in reading, we only tested students in grades 6 through 8. I will talk more specifically about that decision later, but in short, we decided that our local assessments for reading would provide greater actionable information for teachers and would minimize the amount of instructional time devoted to the assessment. In grades 3 through 5, students will be taking the winter assessment in both reading and MAP. Next. After the fall administration of MAP, NWEA did their own analysis of the fall scores. I have linked their study here, it's the first link, as well as their 2020 norms study, linked the second link. I've included it here to show you NWEA's findings so far on student achievement and growth relative to the spring closure. The curves shown on the right right? So the blue curves are the represent the fall scores or growth scores in fall of 2020, while the pink colored curves show the fall scores in 2019. The x-axis indicates the amount of growth students showed from one year to the next. You can see that there was growth in both subject areas, but in mathematics, there was lower growth than in a typical year. This study does expand upon that analysis. These basic findings do correlate to our own analysis. So these charts show you the district-wide mean scores for Bernards Township for grades 3 through 8 in mathematics and 6 through 8 in reading. Each bar represents a different year of the fall test results. Please note, we did not administer MAP in the fall of 2017, and that is why that's not shown here. That year, we decided to implement only in the winter and spring, but we resumed fall testing the next year. The scale is the range of scores on the MAP assessment's RIT scale. You can see from this that it does parallel what NWEA's analysis showed, which is consistent growth for students in reading, in the grades showed here, but less growth than is typical in mathematics. For us, that was more noticeable in grades 6 through 8. So you can see in the blue bar on the far right that represents the fall of 2021, that there is a dip in the fall scores for this current year, as well as a slight dip in growth in grade 4. When we looked at this data in the fall, we asked ourselves some questions, because most assessment and most good assessment just causes you to then ask more questions. One of the metrics provided in our MAP data is the amount of minutes the students spent on the assessment. The typical amount of time on average students spend on each assessment is close to 50 minutes. So the mean number of minutes spent by grade in each area in the fall of 2020 is shown in the blue column to the far right of each grade level. And you can see that in each grade, students spent at least 10 minutes less on each assessment than they did last year. But you can also see that it fluctuates from year to year. This speaks to students' engagement with the assessment. And if they're not engaged with the assessment, then it is not necessarily a completely reliable indicator of what they know and can do. So we work together with the teachers on that issue every year. And the information we have here gives us something to work on with students and teachers for the next MAP administration. Another question we considered was whether there was a difference in scores between our virtual and our blended students. So this was the scores here represent that analysis. And these scores were broken into the virtual student scores on the top part of the chart and the blended student scores on the bottom part of the chart. And this is based on when the test was given, not the makeup of virtual and blended today. So when you look at the blue bar at the bottom of each section for fall 2020 and 2021, and you compare the virtual student scores with the blended scores, you will see that the virtual students scored higher across all grades. So in the 8th grade, the virtual students was a 249 and the blended students was a 241. So that caused us to ask some more questions. And we decided to disaggregate the scores of the students who were virtual when the assessment was administered this fall, looking back at their performance on the assessment over the last few years. So if you look at, and I've circled in red the scores of a cohort of students. So if you start in grade 7 on 2020, fall 2020-21, you see that, and this is the mathematics page, students scored 242 this fall. When they were in 6th grade last year, and compared, to a 231 with their blended cohort students. If you look at their last year's scores, they scored 234 as 6th graders compared to 228 with their blended student cohort, colleagues, peers. So it's still a difference, but a slightly less difference. And then you go into 5th grade, the virtual students' average score was 229 compared to the blended students' average score of 222, a 7-point difference. In 4th grade, you see it was a 2-point difference. And in 3rd grade, again, it was a 2-point difference between virtual and blended students. If you look at the next slide, you see similar results in reading. So across the board, the scores were higher between virtual and blended students, and that was consistent when you look back across their scores over the last 5 years. Thank you. So this next chart includes our district scores for the fall of 2020, fall of 2019, and the fall of 2018 for both reading and mathematics. And under each subject, I've included the district mean score as well as the national norm. So in the fall of 2020, the national norm is based on the 2020 norm study, and for the other 2 years, it is based on the 2015 norm study. So we looked at this data to analyze whether there has been a decline in growth across our grade levels, similar or different to what the NWEA study analyzed. So on the far left for grade 8, I highlighted in blue the comparison between the district score for reading of 230.3 and the national norm of 218. And that is consistent across all grades and all subjects, that we far outperform the national norm at every grade and in every subject. So I highlighted that to show you that comparison. When considering whether we had an increase in growth or a decline in growth, it's important to consider scores as they relate to the standard error. The standard error, which is calculated for each student on each assessment, indicates the statistical likelihood that a student would score within a range of scores if they were to take the assessment again within a few days. So looking at that third grade reading mean score of 200, if that student had a standard error of 5 points, that means that if they took the assessment again, they would score somewhere between 195 and 205. As long as the standard error is within 2 to 6 points, NWEA considers it to be a reliable score for that student. So therefore, when we look at scores over time and growth over time, we are looking for changes that are statistically significant considering the standard error. Again, we can also look at these scores in a given grade level over time. So you can look in green where I have highlighted the scores of our 4th grade students in mathematics. In the fall of 2019, our district mean was 214.1. And in the fall of 2020, it was 211.5. But remember, these are different groups of students. So that is the 4th grade score for 2 different groups of students. You can also look at the score by cohort and consider how cohorts of students perform year to year. So highlighted in red or circled in red, if you look and you start in the 4th grade for mathematics, it would be our current 6th grade students. When they were in 4th grade, their mean score was a 212.9. When they were in 5th grade, their mean score was 222.3. So they had growth of just over 9 points. And then their growth this year in 6th grade was just under, well, it was 2.7 points. I highlight this particular cohort for you to show that this is an area we feel that warrants further investigation, as that would fall into that maybe statistically significant number that I talk about when we look from 5th grade into 6th grade. Although it's important to note here when I'm talking about 5th and 6th grade that we typically do see a decline in growth from grade 5 to grade 6, and that can be explained in part by the fact that the students are taking the 2 through 5 grade math assessment through 5th grade, and they begin taking what's called the 6+ test in the 6th grade. The students in Accelerated Math 5 do take the 6+ test starting in 5th grade because they are learning grade 6 math, but this mean score here for 5th grade represents the students taking the 2 through 5 test. So the test is considered to be the same test, but the 6+ test expands the content that students who do well are exposed to. On the 2 through 5 test, there are questions that cover content that go beyond grade 5, but the number of questions on the higher level content increases when they move into the 6+ test. So we have come to believe that that explains some of the decline in growth when we see students moving into grade 6, and we actually consider the scores as adjusted scores in grade 6 for that reason. So this is a data point we have done some continued investigation on in the past, as well as a result of this fall MAP assessment, in considering the reasons for it, as well as any adjustments that we should make as a result. So the supervisor of mathematics, Mr. Colmer, and the supervisor of English language arts, Mr. Huncher, shared their analysis of the fall MAP data here, which is very consistent with NWEA's analysis of the national scores. The most important thing I'd like to point out here is the fact that as a result of the scores and our work with the teachers, teachers are increasing their use of formative assessments to understand and address these results with individual students. Next. So if you are a parent of a student who has taken either of the assessments I have discussed, the score reports can be found in the Genesis parent portal by going to the Documents tab and then the Document Library, according to these arrows here. Once here, you can click on the PDF to open up the score report. Each score report, if you want to go to the next slide, has additional information to help you understand the results and to explore further information about the scores. If you do not see a score report but believe your child did take the assessment, you can ask the school counselor and we can investigate. Beyond these standardized assessments and based upon decisions relating to those results, we use additional data to monitor student progress and learning. Next. In reading, we have both reading and writing assessments that are used district-wide. Many of the assessments listed here are formative assessments that we have always used, but there are some additional digital formative assessments that we have implemented this year to meet the needs of the virtual learning environment. That includes those found in Seesaw, Google Classroom, on platforms such as Raz Kids, Newsy LA, Flipgrid, and many more. In mathematics, there are a number of ways we assess and analyze student learning. Again, many of which were already being used, like the Think Central chapter tests, and then some we have added to respond to our virtual environment. Those include resources such as Edulastic, Formative, Quizzes, and Delta Math, just to name a few. I mentioned before that we decided not to administer the MAP test in grades 3 through 5 district-wide. So while some teachers may have administered it informally in their own classroom, as a district, we used our own reading assessment for the fall in order to provide teachers with information about the students' reading level that would be more useful to them in the early part of the year. The results of those reading assessments can be found by looking closely at the report cards. In grades 3 and 4, we use a standards-based report card. We will be implementing that in grade 5 next year, but for this year, grade 5 still receive grades in reading and mathematics. In grades 3 and 4, the indicator on the report card that reports out on reads grade level text independently is directly tied to the students' reading assessment scores. So you see that the range of scores, of indicator scores that are shared on the report card range from a 4 to a 1, where 4 is communicates that a student is exceeding expectations. A 3 means a student meets expectations. A 2 means they are approaching expectations, so not quite there. And a 1 means they are not meeting expectations. You will see that just under 82% of students in grade 3 met or exceeded expectations, where in grade 4, just under 78% met or exceeded expectations. The bar in pink reflects students who are approaching expectations, and we consider them to be almost there. And the students in the orange bar are the ones who are not meeting expectations at that time when the report card was communicated. Those students would likely be receiving additional support in reading from our instructional support program. In grade 5, where we do not have a standards-based report card yet, The reading assessment score is incorporated as one measure into the overall reading grade. So you will see that over 90% of students earned either an A or a B in reading, indicating that they are meeting or exceeding expectations. The pink bar indicates students who earned a C in reading, and the orange and the purple represents students who earned either a D or an E. Those, again, would be students who are most likely receiving some kind of support from our instructional support teachers. So the students in these grades will be taking the winter map in reading and mathematics, and so we will continue to look at their scores to analyze student learning and consider ways to assist those students who are not meeting expectations. Teachers and administrators look at this data to monitor student learning and to think about what we can do to improve that learning. Using these results and others, we look to understand and respond to student engagement and achievement. These are intertwined, but they are also separate and require some different approaches. With regard to student engagement, we knew coming into this fall that our students would need some time to transition back to being in school. So we devoted some time, which did vary by grade and by course, to that transition. Throughout this process, we have protocols in place that help us to identify students who are disengaged and who are in need of support, and often an action plan to help. Our counselors, our student assistance counselors, our case managers and assistant principals work together to support these students and their families as it relates to all of the measures of engagement, including attendance, academic achievement, and beyond. The disengaged student learning protocol is one that we have used with teachers to help us identify all students who may be experiencing disengagement, but that which is not always easily identified in these traditional measures. From there, we can focus on students individually to meet their needs through small groups, individual conferences, and increased communications between home and school. For students whose struggles go beyond academic and the kind of engagement I've described thus far, our counseling department sent out a counseling needs assessment in the fall, and they will send it out again in the winter. This is a self-assessment that can help students and their families to be connected with the resources they need as it relates to their mental health and well-being. If you did not complete this assessment in the fall, I would encourage you to look for it when Ms. Smith sends it out in the coming weeks. We also closely monitor student achievement, and we've worked with our existing learning environment to make adjustments that support student learning. Many of the things listed here were already in place, but we have expanded upon them or adjusted them, as well as added those that we felt were needed. We have worked to create dedicated time for teachers to meet and discuss student results and to collaborate for how to help those students, especially when they are seeing the same students in different classes. We have worked to closely scrutinize our curriculum and adjust the scope and sequence to emphasize the most critical standards in the most depth. So while we haven't eliminated standards, we have prioritized standards, which means they have in some cases also been reordered. We have invested in a number of tools to help teachers adjust to the virtual and hybrid learning environment, and they are used across the grades and subjects as they best support student learning. We have provided teachers with professional development since March to help them adjust to the new learning environment. Our current and future plans as they relate to assessment and student learning include these things and others. First, we will administer the standardized assessments in the spring, although remember the NJSLA is one we are awaiting further guidance on from the Department of Education and could certainly be canceled. We will administer MAP again, as indicated here, for grades 3 and 5 in the winter and spring, and grades 6 and 8 through 8 in the spring. We will continue to focus on our scope and sequence to prioritize critical learning standards for the greatest depth. And we will continue to focus on supporting student learning as needed with an individualized approach to interventions, which includes differentiation within the classroom, additional support in ELA and mathematics in our instructional support program, and our intervention and referral plans K through 12 for students in need of additional supports. As we move into the spring, We will continue to analyze assessment results to determine what, if any, interventions to put in place over the summer or next fall. We plan to offer a summer intervention program, as we did last year, for our kindergarten and first grade students in literacy. We are considering possible programs in grades 2 through 5 for literacy and K through 5 for mathematics based upon need and our available budgetary and staffing resources. So we help our students best when we work together and we have a strong homeschool connection that supports students. As a parent, if you think your child is struggling, consider the things on this list and beyond. First, help your child create a learning environment at home that they can work best in. Talk to your child about what they're doing in school and ask to see the assignments and communications from their teachers. If you have concerns, please reach out to their teacher. They have the best information to help your child right away. If you are still concerned, reach out to the school counselor or the building student assistance counselor for help. Their contact information will be linked to this presentation tomorrow, but you can also find it by calling your building. Each building's counseling site has a number of resources to support your child, and we will continue to offer opportunities to help families navigate this challenge. I'd like to draw your attention to 2 upcoming presentations. Strategies for Coping with the Pandemic is presented by Somerset County Traumatic Loss Coalition, I believe that's the name. And then the last one will be a follow-up to the George Scott presentation we offered in the fall. We are currently finalizing those details for March and we'll send out a flyer in the coming weeks. And then lastly, look for Ms. Smith's presentation on trends in mental health scheduled for April 25th. Remember, reach out to us for help. That's what all of us are here for. So I've said a lot tonight, but the summary is that assessment is an important tool for our teachers and our administrators to understand student learning and to help our students learn. We believe that targeted and smaller formative assessments that help teachers support learning at an individual level are the most valuable. Small group and one-on-one learning are a priority, especially at the primary grades. In our current environment, we are challenged by the difficulty of engaging students in a virtual environment, as well as the fact that our larger standardized assessments remain in question. Thank you. And so I would finish. Maybe we can go out of speaker view and I'll see if anybody has any questions. I know that was a lot of information.
Am I the only board member who's having a little bit of difficulty hearing Ms. Fox?
Really?
Just a little at the end.
Okay.
I see Ms. Beckman's hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question on the February 28th, the strategies for coping with the pandemic stress. You list them as parent workshops, but
Well, they're live presentations, really.
Pardon me?
Live presentations, which will include Q&A.
Are kids invited or the
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's all.
Sure.
Questions from other board members?
Ms. Korn?
Ms. Fox? Mrs. Korn?
Hi, thanks so much. That was like a lot of work. I'm still surprised the state is even expecting this because it seems really, talk about out of touch. Whoa, like blowing my mind right out of the water, right? But I had a question about I was looking at the MAP assessments and I know that the MAP assessments, you get the results almost like very quickly and it's very helpful to the teachers to see where the kids are at right now. And I saw that, I saw the amount of time spent was pretty dramatic for I guess it was the fall, right? The fall.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And was it broken out? Did you give the kids, the blended kids, did they get the MAP testing in school? And
okay,
then,
so in grades 3 through 5, it was different in the different grade bands. So I'll explain them. In grades 3 through 5, remember the students have a virtual teacher. The students who are virtual only have a virtual teacher.
mm-hmm.
So at the elementary level, the teachers administered the assessment to the students in school when they were in school. And then the virtual only teachers administered it and proctored it for their virtual students separately, but at the same time. in the same window of testing. Whereas at the middle school, the students are in class together, like blended and virtual. And so those assessments were given during advisory and administered to the in-school students in school and the virtual students at home at the same time. So logged in and proctored together at the same time.
But some of them were actually physically in school.
Some were in school, right? Our in-school students were in school,
right?
And our virtual students were at home.
So was there a difference between the time taken by the kids in school and the kids at home? Or do you not have those numbers?
I don't have those numbers now. I can certainly see if they exist, right? So we broke the scores out by virtual and blended. It may be possible to do that for the number of minutes as well.
I just was curious about if it was in school. They just wanted.
So just keep in mind that it is not timed, and so students can test. Right, so when they're in school, sometimes it carries into the next day, and when they're at home, so it's not timed. Number one, and number two, for the students in the middle school, they were taking it at the same time as their in-school peers. So it could still go into another day, but it would be, the same thing available to everybody.
But they still took a markedly less time to take it.
As a whole, they did.
As a whole, thinking that maybe it wasn't.
Yes, they did.
They were just kind of, I don't know if it was, because they're on computers a lot now. I don't know, because it was a little bit more, they were taking it before, it was they weren't on a computer all day long, like every day, which they are now. So it might have been kind of fatigue, maybe. I was just throwing that out.
It could definitely be a reason.
And those tests, how long do they usually test? Like out of the day, how long are the map tested?
The average test takes, a typical student takes approximately 52 minutes. But the length of the test varies, right? Depending on how many, each student gets a number of questions in the 50 question range that allows MAP to correlate their score, right, based on the difficulty level of the questions they were able to answer. So some students, the test might end sooner, and some students it might take a bit longer, but that's the average, is about 52 minutes.
So it's not, they don't take up a ton of time of time there.
Well, we have students who rush, right? And they take it in half the time, and that would lead to some of this disengagement that we might be talking about. And then we have students who take double the time.
Right.
Ranges.
I just mean overall, compared to like the state thing. This is much more concise or no?
Yes. I mean, when you look at the NJSLA, there's more than one unit in each assessment. So there's 3
right. So they go on and
LA,
on.
And there are 2 units in mathematics. So they're over multiple days in different tests or components of the test. Whereas there's 1 reading assessment and there's 1 mathematics assessment.
Right. I'm just trying to make a point, but I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it.
I see Ms. Schaefer's hand.
I didn't mean to cut Mrs. Korn off, but do you have
I'm
something?
sorry. I think I'm on like a second or 2 delay. So my apologies, Mrs. Korn. Did I cut you off?
Well, I just had one more question regarding the NJSLA. That's it, and I'm good.
Okay.
Because it seems to me unrealistic for them to give us a spring test, especially since, and correct me if I'm wrong, because when we were talking, you were saying you're streamlining curriculum because of the time constraints we have because of the schedule now. So we're picking out the most important, what we think is the most important that kids really need to learn. And the NJSLA seems to not do that. So it seems like it would be a disconnect between our kids, like all kids. I'm not just saying our kids, but kids and the test.
Here's what I can tell you about that. Right now, it is really in the hands of the federal government, right? This is a federal requirement that states administer this. And so at this moment in time, the federal government has not indicated that they will, waive the assessment.
So the federal government had to waive it in the fall.
And then states would have to then request a waiver. So New Jersey would have to request a waiver and then be granted the waiver.
Which seems like a good letter writing thing to tell everyone we need it to be.
And there are people doing that. And in the meantime, right, we are proceeding with plans. Like that's what our guidance has been so far, is to plan the test dates, plan the test sessions, get our training, which we're working on. And then the only other thing we've been told is that at this time there will be a remote option for administration of the assessment, but we don't have any information about what that would look like.
Okay.
None.
Well, and thank you. And I'm sorry that they're putting, I hate to see us jump through hoops when we're really trying to get these kids, you know, back in school and also like educated. So
there
this
is
seems like
the other side of the argument is having information about student learning may be helpful in understanding kind of what's gone on over the last 2 years.
We have maps, so that's what I'm saying.
Correct.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go back to Ms. Schaefer and then Mrs. White.
So I guess the question begs, and maybe I didn't see it, but have you thought about, or is there any extrapolation about what is currently happening with the students? Like, have we lost ground? You know, this is the question of over this past year. And I know a map is being given again in the winter, and then the spring we'll have a little bit more information. But is there any sense, and I think people are always interested in comparing. So this spring, or, you know, let's say spring 2020 to spring 2019, and spring 2021 to 2020 and 2019. You know, is there any sense of where we are compared to national and compared to ourselves in the past?
I don't know that I could speak to that compared nationally at this moment. Like, remember, we're just halfway through the school year. So we have just completed grades for the secondary level and are beginning to take a look at just grades and what that can tell us in terms of student performance and comparing that a bit to last year. I can tell you at an initial look of students in the D and E range, right? So those would be the ones we'd be most worried about. It is not that different from last year, slight increase. So we might have expected to see more of that. That's halfway through the year. And we would do a similar analysis of the elementary report cards at the end of the second trimester. So it's one measure. Other measures are, you would probably call them anecdotal as it relates to our work with the teachers, right, in their grade level meetings and their content level meetings. And certainly what we hear when talking to the principals and talking to teachers and supervisors is that the teachers feel we're in a better position than they would have expected. So they don't feel that they are significantly behind based on, you know, what we've done in terms of resequencing content, emphasizing critical standards and spending more time on those than we might on some of the supporting standards. So that's an anecdotal bit of feedback. It related as well to the reading assessment results that teachers administered in the fall, right? And then we'll do again as we go through the year, that they were pleasantly surprised in that regard. So it is ongoing work, and we are really just in the middle of it, and we continue to work like weekly and daily with teachers to see how they're doing on formative assessments and, you know, grades and things like that.
So the testing, at some point we can have comparative information, maybe in 6 months, a year.
Testing meaning like tests given,
like the MAP or the NJSLA.
Yeah, we will continue to analyze that as we go through the year. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mrs. White?
I know that in past years, when kids have taken the math MAP scores, you had the ability to, even though it's untimed, and I think it may have even been something with the rubric too, of they needed to complete it in a certain amount of time. I don't know if that correlated to a score or not, but I wonder if there's some sort of, you know, it's great that it's untimed, but, you know, kids do have to be able to get their work done in certain periods of time. And I wonder if there's any correlation of, you know, the kid who is spending, let's say, 50 minutes to get a certain score versus the kid who spends 20 minutes and gets that score, and, you know, how that factors into their classroom performance.
So specifically, I think one thing you're referring to is relative to its use as one of the measures for placement in accelerated mathematics. That is where we look at students in terms of how long they're spending on the assessment, and it's part of the rubric. And there's a reason for that. In accelerated mathematics in particular, there's really a need to move at a faster pace than we would consider average or typical. For the MAP assessment, we're less concerned about that because, like I said, it's mostly intended at the instructional level as a diagnostic. And so taking away constraints of time it's better to know what a student can do and then work with them in the classroom in terms of, you know, what supports they needed or things like that. But so we're really trying to identify, you know, their level of understanding, their readiness for learning relative to the content standards that the teacher is presenting. So it's not unimportant, and it's certainly something we can kind of look at and see if it varies significantly. But then on the other end of the spectrum, right, the kids who take not enough time are the ones we might be more worried about. And they're either rapid guessing, they call it, or just not spending enough time. And MAP actually has a calculation relative to rapid guessing. And so if a student moves too quickly through a test, it will actually not even calculate a score. And then we can at times ask a student to retake the assessment because they were moving too fast through the test. So that's of more concern than maybe a student who just moves at a slower pace.
Mrs. McCune. Oh, sorry, you'll be next, Mr. Salmon.
Following up on Ms. Korn's comments about the state and the waiver for the testing, there's a lot of articles, recent stuff on Save Our Schools New Jersey about it, because there's pressure on the new education commissioner, federal education commissioner, to not waive the test. So it's a political thing. So if you're interested in that, or you want to do any letter writing, you can go on Save Our Schools New Jersey and get the information.
Thank you.
Mr. Salmon?
First, I want to say that I swear I did not tell Jen White to ask the question about timing. That is my big MAP beef. Everybody knows it. I swear that we were not in cahoots. The extra help sessions are on that conclusion side about the K through 1 reading and then K through 5 math. I'm assuming that's going to be based on testing scores and grades. And then is that something that will only happen over the summer, or can we start doing some of that now? I understand the caveats about budget and staffing, but you know, given that we're in the almost through the second trimester at elementary level and through the second marking period for the secondary schools, can we start doing some of that stuff now?
Some of the interventions?
Yeah.
You mean, well, we absolutely are, right? As far as students who are considered below grade level or not meeting expectations, they are receiving additional support, right, in ELA and mathematics if they are at a certain threshold on these assessments. So they absolutely are receiving some of those supports. You're talking about planning for some more, you know, like additional time and some other kinds of things that would be outside of the school day. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, effectively the same exact thing we did that
in the summer.
Ms. Vitale did with the
summer?
Dibbles assessment for the little kids over the summer. That same exact program. Is there any value in trying to get that started earlier with those kids that are falling behind in either based on assessments or grades now?
I guess I would say that we are, right? It's part of instruction in identifying students who are below and giving them the supports they need as part of the school day. And that looking at it for the summer is a way of adding in some extra time for students with targeted skill deficits, especially in that K-1 program you're describing. But relative to like all of the other students in the other grades and in mathematics, it is going to be based on what we see happening. And like to the point of looking at those scores, there is not a significant loss seen from the fall scores. So we have to continue to monitor it and see what we can do, you know, now what is meaningful, right? We want it to be meaningful when the kids need it. And so we're open to considering anything that we have the budget and the staffing for. But right now, I feel like the systems in place for support are what we're relying on and using and are meeting, you know, the needs that we know of at this time. And so that's kind of part of the other reason for suggesting to parents who might have other concerns that haven't come to the surface to reach out, you know, and make sure we're aware of that. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but I can certainly.
No, so we're doing that already based on grades.
I think so. Based on grades on formative assessment. So remember, like a reading assessment is not, it is on the report card in the way I showed you, but there are a lot of formative assessments where the teachers are identifying things that students need additional help in all the time. And whether that's done within the classroom by the classroom teacher, right, in terms of differentiating instruction and seeing where a student needs some help in a particular area, right, and supplementing instruction that way, or whether it rises to the level of needing some additional time with one of our support teachers as part of a process, right? There's a process for requesting that a student be looked at and considered for additional support during the day. And so that is in ongoing all the time right now.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions for Ms. Fox? Ms. Fox, thank you very much.
Welcome.
We appreciate all the time you put into that presentation and all the detail. I think we are now up to Superintendent's report. Mr. Markarian.
Thank you. Yes, we have just one voting item, our HIB report. So maybe we could take care of that. And then I have a few things to just kind of go over with folks.
Could we have a motion, please, for the HIB report? Mrs. Richmond and Mrs. McCune. And Mr. McLaughlin, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Corn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes,
Madam President.
thank you. And Mr. McCrary, back to you, please.
Sure. So let me just share screen here. I gotta get the right one. Okay, so you should see a blue slide that says Superintendent's Report. Great. So just wanted to share a few slides here so that I would remember everything I wanted to go over with everyone. But first, I just wanted to welcome Ruchika Hira. Congratulations on your appointment, and we're happy to have you. We look forward to getting to know you and working with you. And also thank you to Fareen for coming out and also participating in the process for consideration. So thank you both, and again, welcome Ruchika. I also want to just mention briefly our website. My apologies for the fact that we seem to be struggling to get the website stabilized, if you will. Just know that it is not Alex Blinder or the IT staff on our end. Unfortunately, our web hosting service is having a significant issue with some of their servers, as it was explained to me without getting overly technical. And they are restoring our web page from a backup, and it has not been going very well, apparently. So we are getting there, but again, my apologies. I know we had to send out a separate web page tonight to the community so that they could access the material for tonight's meeting. So I apologize, and hopefully our host gets this remedied quickly, and we get our website back to normal. But in any case, just a few thoughts relative to some of the emails or communications or frequently asked questions that have come up recently since our last Board of Ed meeting, and I just made a few notes. Several people have asked about a recent article, news media report that they'd seen about reopening schools, and in fact, by title of the article, Reopening Schools Safely Without Vaccinating Teachers. And I just wanted to share with folks that that's what we have done, right? We have done exactly that. We have reopened our schools, and we did that without vaccinating our teachers, without vaccinating any of our staff. We reopened the schools back in October, and fortunately, for the most part, we have been able to keep our schools open with some necessary closures, but for the most part, all of our schools have been open. So I do believe that in many cases, when officials are talking about reopening schools, the target audience is not schools like ours that are open, but places where the students are strictly virtual, 100% virtual. There's no in-person learning whatsoever. So I appreciate certainly the goal I think that we all have is to make schools open all of the time for all of the students who want to come, or full school days. I know that we all want to get to that place as soon as we can safely get there. But I don't want people thinking that our schools aren't open. Our schools are open. Students are scheduled for activities and learning all day long. Sometimes it's synchronous, sometimes it's asynchronous, sometimes it's direct instruction, sometimes it's not. But we do have our schools open, and we have a full slate of instruction happening with our students. One of the things that I think is a key aspect to a lot of what we see published about schools being open safely is that the measurement of safety that has been taken while schools have been implementing safety measures. So the idea of being open is based on precautions that were taken. So I just clipped a sentence from the article that notes that, you know, we feel as though it's safe to open schools when you have certain safety precautions in place, such as wearing masks, social distancing, ventilating rooms. And there's a whole list of mitigation strategies that go beyond that on the CDC's website. I just listed them there. We are essentially using every one of those mitigation strategies to one level or another. Certainly social distancing is probably our biggest challenge when it comes to trying to bring students back in person. I think we've talked about this ad nauseum. The fact that the numbers matter if you're trying to do social distancing. You know, this is why we basically hired whatever elementary school teachers we could find that were viable and qualified to help in our elementary school classrooms, so that the students could come in on a daily basis with smaller class sizes, so that we could continue to keep social distancing a priority. And that's our challenge as we scale up throughout the district, trying to anticipate what are those class sizes going to be like, and will we be able to maintain a measure of social distancing, which all the studies continue to highlight, as does the CDC highlight the fact that social distancing is an important mitigation strategy to use. So that's really our challenge, and the one that we will continue to grapple with as we move forward. Folks have asked about programs that other districts are using. We are keeping tabs on that. Certainly on the county level, our administrators in our district are involved with the county leadership, involved with county level meetings for curriculum and superintendent leaders, special services leaders. So we have a pretty good feel for what's going on in Somerset County in the public schools here. We really are not seeing any situations where any of the schools are open for a full day for all students to attend daily. We are seeing some examples as we look around, not just the county, but also around the state, where we see some exceptions where schools that have very low in-person enrollments are allowing students to come daily. And that's obviously what we have tried to measure in our selection forms that we sent out most recently, was to gauge how many folks would actually come in person if we allowed them to come daily, because that allows us to look at class sizes, which we presented on at the last Board of Ed meeting, where we took note of how many sections that would have 15 or more students in them, so that we could gauge our ability to do social distancing based on those selection forms of what people said they would do if they had access to coming into school on a daily basis. So it's a numbers game to try to manage student count so that we can continue to do social distancing. And you know, if you have a school district where only 15% of the students commit to coming to school for in-person classes, then your numbers are going to be very low. Even if every single one of those 15% come in on a daily basis, you're going to have small class sizes and you're going to be able to social distance. So what are some of the things that we talked about on January 25th? There's really two recommendations that we're working through. One is well underway, and that was bringing back our elementary school students on a daily basis, continuing to follow the abbreviated day where the students are being dismissed at 1 o'clock. So we're feeling like we're making progress. Kindergarten and first grade are coming to school on a daily basis at this point for those students who made a selection to be in-person students. The same will happen with our second grade students. February 17th is their first day to, again, according to the parent selection forms, for those students to start coming to school in person on a daily basis. And that's really where the emphasis of the staff that were approved for those grade levels was placed, to keep those students able to come to school on a daily basis with small class sizes. As we go forward, in grades 3, 4, and 5, we have 2 more dates planned. The third and fourth graders on February 22nd would start daily in person. Again, according to the selection forms that the parents have completed, they will be scheduled for in-person classes on a daily basis. And we are still trying to manage some of the numbers as we get closer to February 22nd to try to resolve any situations where we may have classes where we feel like we're going to be challenged to social distance. The simple reality is obviously that if you increase class size, there is less space between the students. We have to recognize that that's what this means. We're going to try to do, and hopefully goes well, and we don't have any situations causing us to need to step backwards. But we have to recognize that that's a possibility as well, and we need to be prepared to do that if we need to. Fifth grade, we have planned for starting March 1st, again, with the same scenario, coming in daily with an early dismissal at 1 o'clock. I wanted to touch on the A-Day, B-Day balance in connection with the elementary schools. I know that last week was unpleasant, to say the least, with the amount of snow and the closures that we had. Unfortunately, we're continuing to see a lot of snow in the forecast, even with this week. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that if you consider what we have planned for those elementary school students that I shared on the last slide, we really hope to have all of the K-5 students coming to school daily by March 1st. So any balancing of A days and B days really kind of needed to happen in February if we were going to even attempt to do that, which is why we did make adjustments for February 5th, 17th, and 18th. We switched those from B days to A days. I appreciate that that causes disruption. I understand that, that created some situations where people had made plans for one thing or another. Certainly, I apologize for that disruption, but we were trying to, by the end of February, try to true up the A days and B days, really for the K-5 students, since we had these plans to have them all coming back to school daily by March 1st. Going beyond March 1st and thinking about the middle school and the high school, we don't have dates yet to make changes for their programs in terms of whether or not they start coming to school daily. So we may have to revisit that for 6-12. But of course, we have these situations with these snowstorms. And are those going to be on A days, B days, both A days and B days? We don't really know. And given how disruptive it is, every time we try to rebalance A and B days, I'm not so sure how much more of that we want to keep doing, especially when the length of notice is short and we switch a day on short notice. I recognize that creates quite a bit of disruption, and I don't know how much of that we want to keep on doing because it's tough to keep those days balanced all the time with unpredictable weather storms. So following up again on 612, as a reminder, what we are looking at does not have a specific date tied to it because we are looking at the Cali score, at least for our sector of the state. The state's been divided into 6 areas, and our section is still in the high, which we'll take a look at momentarily. But we're looking for 6 to 12 to make the same shift that we have planned dates for the K-5 students, meaning we'd like to eliminate the cohorts in grades 6 to 12. We'd like to bring those students in daily in person, again, based on the selection forms that parents recently submitted. And the timing of that is based on that Cali score getting the yellow and feeling like we have the support of the local health department in reviewing the local data within Berners Township, as well as other health officials that we have been consulting with respect to making shifts in our instructional programs and bringing more students in. So there isn't a date associated with that because I'm not sure when that shift to yellow is going to happen, but it seems like a logical place for us to be in terms of feeling like the overall health of our area is taking a step in the right direction. This is just a quick highlight. This comes off of the state's website where they track the COVID activity level index. That's the CALI, Cali score that I was just referencing. They are posting this on Thursdays. The last time it was updated, produced this slide, produced this calculation. We are Central West portion of the state. We're still in the high activity level. And if you want to see the actual calculation, it comes from the bottom portion of this slide where it shows our case rate, our percent CLI, our percent positivity, which produces that Cali score of 3, which translates to the high level. So really it's that case rate number. We have 2 out of 3 that are in yellow. When that case rate number gets down, I think the number is 25. It comes out of very high, because it's actually red right now, is very high. If we can get it down to orange, we'll review the conversation with our health officials and see if we can select a date to uncohort, if you will, at the 612 level. So those were really responses to some Q&As that I was sent, and I just wanted to make sure I had some slides to guide the response there so you have the information. And certainly I will post this as part of the minutes for the meeting as well. That's all I had in the superintendent's report, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Marquina. I don't know, that was sort of like a presentation, so I just want to consult with the board. Does anyone have any questions at this time? Okay, so then, oh yes, Mrs. White.
Not so much a question, I just want to clarify. So this coming Thursday, you'll get the Cali score, so to speak. And based on that, you'll be able to say, we're not ready, we move on to next week. Then next Thursday, we get the Cali score. When you get that, I'm curious, we got to give leeway time to parents. So when you do say, yay, we can go back more, that they have that preparation time. So how's that tie into the Cali score, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, we're actually talking about that very issue today, trying to work on taking a look at all those selection forms and figuring out a way to kind of validate all the information with parents so that, as you point out, everyone understands what the switch is going to be. So we're taking a look at how we might be able to use Genesis to see if we can achieve that. But, I mean, look, we're looking at a Thursday, and then I would say within less than a week's time of getting to quote unquote yellow, we can sit down and start bringing students in. But like I said, I don't think it should just be, oh, look, we're yellow. everything go, go, go. I think we have to talk to our local health officials, because just because you're yellow in the area of our sector of Central West doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing in our town. So I'd want to talk to our local health officials before taking that step and having a little consultation with them. They certainly, we certainly talk to them about this process and wanting to, you know, have that conversation. And so they know the direction that we're trying to go. But I would think within a fairly short period of time, you know, I'm thinking within a week or so of being able to be in that yellow zone, that we should expect to try to take a step forward in letting students come back to school uncohorted, if you will, on an in-person basis. I just don't, you know, I don't want people to say, well, we turn yellow and the next day everybody comes back. And I appreciate, you know, obviously it's nice to have notice and an expectation of when this may occur, but this is a more inclusive step. You know, in terms of daycare, you would need less and not more. So hopefully people will be excited to take that step in allowing their child to come back to school based on the selection form that we have. You know, whether or not folks will actually do that remains to be seen, right? You know, just because you indicated that you wanted your child to come back to school daily when we get to that point, it doesn't mean necessarily that people are going to actually do it. And that also has a big impact on actual class size and social distancing, right? You know, it's one thing on paper to see that 60%, 65% of parents selected that they would have their child come to school every day when we start allowing it. What does that do to class size? We can do that math, but if kids don't actually come, it's going to have a much more significant impact on the class size that we're trying to manage, right? We see that happening right now. You know, lots of students are eligible to come on the A day or the B day, but they don't come. So, you know, even though we're ready to accept students, for whatever reason, they're not coming to school, and we understand that there's a host of reasons why they would say, well, I'm going to be virtual for the day instead of coming to school. So to try to guess what's going to happen is really difficult to do because we can't predict from one day to the next right now, even tomorrow. Will we get half the kids? Will we get 70% of the kids? We're not sure. And that'll have an impact on class size. But I'd like to think, you know, within a week or so of seeing what we need to see, we can get it going.
Mrs. McCune?
Just to clarify for the public, when you're talking about daily instruction for 6 to 12, Wednesdays would still stay the same as they are now, right? But the kids would come in on their 4 days of both cohorts. So the A and B would both come.
Yes, everything, right. So essentially everything stays the same. Wednesdays stay the same, 100% virtual. The schedule on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday doesn't change. You just come every day, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good point.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so I guess with that, we can move on to our next agenda item, which is public comment on agenda items. We'll begin with Ms. Fox. Do we have anyone who is in the waiting room?
We do. I will admit the first person, Nancy Clarisi. Hello, Miss Clarisi. Are you there to make public comment?
Hello, Mrs. Clarisi. Ms. Fox, is there anyone else waiting?
Yeah, there is. She's gonna, yes, I will admit the next person.
Okay, maybe we can just have her stay there for the moment in case she comes back.
So I'm admitting Anita DeAngelis. Hello. I think she's connecting to audio. I think you're connected and you just need to unmute yourself now.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Anita DeAngelis. I live at 2 Lafayette Lane. I am a school nurse at Ridge High School. This is my 17th year as a school nurse in the district. My 3 children have attended our schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. So I am also very familiar with being a parent in the district. I am speaking in response to comments made at the last board meeting, and I am representing the other 9 district nurses. I would like to highlight just a part of the role of a school nurse for our board. According to the National Association of School Nurses are grounded in ethical, evidence-based practice, are the leaders that bridge healthcare and education, and provide care coordination and advocate for quality student-centered care. We work collaboratively with all of our teachers, staff, and administrators. Most of the school nurses in our district also hold a teaching certification. Therefore, you can see that we are not just medical professionals, but we are an integral part of the educational team. We want our students back in school. We miss seeing them every single day and have worked this entire school year to achieve that end. Navigating this pandemic has been challenging on all levels, but we believe that we have maintained a team approach with all parties involved to mitigate the communicability of this virus. We, along with the cooperation of our parents, have been able to keep our buildings open. We realize the difficulty for our families as well as our staff, as everyone is affected. We care for the health and well-being of all of our students and staff. To imply that we are less than part of the team and that we are taking a unifocal approach to our students' education is not only unfair, but it is inaccurate. I would like to close with a policy statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics with regard to the role of the school nurse in providing school health services. Academic achievement, improved attendance, and better graduation rates can be a direct result of a coordinated team effort among the medical, family, and educational homes, all recognizing that good health and strong education cannot be separated. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Fox, do we have anyone else?
I will let in Keith Molinari. Hello, Mr. Molinari. You are in the meeting. You just need to unmute yourself.
There, can you hear me?
Yes, there you go. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Keith Molinari, 27 Franklin Drive. Mr. Markarian and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have been a critic of the board's performance via written public comment and emails. And I feel it's important to deliver my comments live or as close to live as the decision to continue virtually allows. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ms. White.
Mr. Molinari, Mr.
Yes.
Molinari, so the YouTube video stream is lagging behind the call that you're on. So that's
Gotcha.
probably why. Okay.
I understand. Okay. The board's frequently expressed how hurtful it is that some parents aren't appreciative of the board's efforts. I don't doubt the efforts. Almost a year into this, I do question the results. We expect better results and increased pace of reopening. And if you can't collectively deliver that, then step down. This is a talented community. Others will step up. At the end of the day, the superintendent and the board are replaceable. Our children's education is not. Mr. Salmon, Mr. Markarian, you both said you follow the science. I have right here 5 separate scientific articles laying out the different aspects of the safety and necessity of in-person school. There are pieces from the New England Journal of Medicine, Pediatrics, UNICEF, the CDC, and even you can get them with a quick Google search. And I know you've been sent them and similar pieces by parents. Now, those opposed to quickening the pace of reopening will pick pieces of information you believe you must follow, such as the Cali score. You know, I sympathize that in the absence of 100% definitive data, it's easy to try to please everyone, even those who are the most fearful of increased in-person time. Now, this seems to be the stance of the teachers union, who, despite the preponderance of evidence, appear to be digging in their heels all over the country, as well as here in Burns Township. Now, to the union, I say this: you're squandering the goodwill your members deserve. And I'm separating that from the teachers. The teachers, our teachers, are the reason we love this district. And that's why we want our kids back in school with you. The union's doing you a disservice. And if you truly believe in the cause of moving towards full-time school, now's the time to speak up. Perhaps part of the issue is it can be hard to put metrics on the benefits of an in-person instruction. How do you quantify the value of social interaction, real eye contact, the experience of conducting an actual chemistry experiment in the presence of your teacher? Mental health, socialization, being and feeling normal, they're hard to put a number on. Easier to label, as in the words of Dr. Spiesler, collateral damage. In the absence of certainty regarding infection rates and transmission levels, lawsuits, have a certainty of purpose. Use as your North Star the mission statement and philosophy of the district. Education is your first priority. Intellectual, social, physical, emotional development are essential to a student's education. There's more on the website, but all aspire to the same standards. If you truly believe that what you've been doing lately upholds those standards, then you are lost. Get these kids back in school 5 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molinari. Ms. Fox,
There's
do we have
one more
anyone?
person right now in the waiting room. I'll let Nella Oliveira in.
Welcome, Ms. Oliveira. You appear to be muted, so if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to begin with your name and address. Thank you, Mr. Molinari.
I'll let Nella Oliveira.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay, so
Welcome, Ms. Oliveira. You appear to be muted. I think you need to turn down your YouTube in the background because you're getting feedback on the delay.
bear with me.
Thank you, Mr. Molinari.
I'll let Nella Oliveira.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for letting me speak today. So I'm from 83 Galloping Hill Road, and I just wanted to address Mr. Markarian and the board. I have to ask several things. So with other districts like Randolph and New Providence that have also been going through the same thing as us, they have mandated where teachers must come into the school in order to be considered full-time teachers and paid as such. So if a teacher needs to teach virtually, they basically have to come into school and they have to teach in a classroom by themselves. So I'd like to know why that was never implemented for Ridge. I asked this question also of Mr. Markarian back in September, and most recently in an email last week. I'm curious as to, with less time assigned to courses and to teachers' subjects, and I'm referring to high school, of course, how is the curriculum actually being taught to its full capacity? How are the teachers actually completing the instruction of curriculum in 65% of the time allotted prior to March 20th of 2020? I'd also like to understand, with the MAP testing and the results, was it taken into account the amount of tutoring that parents are having to now pay for? And this is in all of the grades. And basically just to supplement the lack of instruction time and the face-to-face teaching that's happening, primarily in the 6 to 12 grades. Now, you say that with students, that they're choosing to stay home. The fact is, many students aren't necessarily choosing to stay home because they just don't feel like getting out of bed. They're choosing to stay home because they're going into school and having to actually see just walls with no other students in there and no teacher in there. My daughter herself, half of the teachers are now virtual. So what is the point of her going into school when she's going to be just on a computer regardless? I'd also like to ask, just in terms of, sorry, bear with me. As far as the precautions and the capital improvements that are needed in order to bring students back into school 5 days a week, where is that itemized list? What is it that needs to happen? Mr. Markarian was just talking about the Cali score, and that even though if it turns into yellow, we're not really sure when that's going to happen. What are the measures that are being taken in order to prepare for a yellow Cali score? I'd really like to know. And the fact that when he says that reopening schools is what we've done now as of October, if 2 half days in school with 65% of instruction time.
Excuse me, Ms. Oliver, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've reached the 3 minutes, so please.
Sorry. If that's honestly what's considered reopening schools, I think that he needs to reconsider his career options here, because this is not reopening schools. Thank you.
Ms. Fox, do we have any other comments?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'll let in Charles Lamb Stewart. Hello, Mr. Lamb Stewart. You are in the meeting. You look to be muted. I don't know if you can hear us. There's one more person in the way.
Charles, can you hear us? Are you able to unmute yourself? Did you say there was one other person?
Yeah, there's one other person right now. We'll let him in. It says Woody John.
Good evening, Woody. Can you hear us? Good evening. If you could unmute yourself, I think we'll be able to hear you.
There's a chat. Can I go after my microphone isn't working? From Charles Lamb Stewart.
Yeah, it seems like the second person you let in is showing the live feed of us. So yeah. I'm not sure what to make of that, but perhaps
Do you want me to
they
move
don't
them back to
tend
the
to make a
waiting room? Do
comment.
you want me to move them back to the waiting room?
Perhaps, I mean, yes, okay.
Email in.
Yes, please send your email if you're having difficulty connecting.
Or
Charles said.
second public comment too.
Yeah.
Second public
Yes, or
comment.
please come back and join us in the second public comment.
And so we did get a chat from this person saying that their microphone was not working.
Okay, so Charles, we leave it up to you. You can try again in the second public comment, or perhaps you'd like to send in your comment via text or email as an alternative since your microphone is not cooperating for you this evening.
My microphone is working, Daddy.
Okay. All right, so there's no one else in the waiting room?
Yeah, there's one more person there now.
Okay. Good evening, Joe. If you've joined us to make a public comment, please state your name, unmute yourself and state your name and address and share your comment with us.
I'm Cherubina Lane.
Oh boy.
Okay, so I guess we're going to move along to the emailed or text public comments from Mr. Syatt, if we're ready for that.
Yes. Okay, I'll read the public comment on agenda items. So as they relate to the superintendent's report. This will take me a little bit longer because I need to filter through the comments that are directly related to public comment first. So the first comment is from Meredith and Jim DeSanti, 157 Woods End Drive. One question to the board. When will you start following the CDC, town health department, and experienced physicians' recommendations and guidelines for quarantining? Right now, the strict quarantine rules you have in place are more than what the CDC recommends, and as a result are doing nothing but punishing children with more screen time, more alone time, less activity, and zero socialization. The children are missing out on lessons, important school tests, life skills, etc., and are getting absolutely nothing except anxiety, depression, weight, and total mush brain. This past week, our family had an experience that we wouldn't wish upon anyone. After our 6-year-old daughter was identified as a close contact in school, our family immediately went to get PCR tests. Everyone, including our daughter, had zero symptoms, but her test came back positive. We were told that she had to quarantine for 10 days, and our son, who had a negative PCR test, would have to quarantine for an additional 14 days on top of that, for a total of 24 days. After taking several more PCR retests, which were all negative, we are confident the first test was a false positive test. Our pediatrician cleared our daughter and called the health department on our behalf to see if our son could test out of quarantine after 7 to 10 days per the CDC guidelines, so he could safely get back to school and quarantine with activities. The health department stated that it was the school district's decision as to whether our son would be allowed back to school. However, we were initially told by the school district that it was the health department's decision to make. When we reached back out to the school district with the okay from our pediatrician and feedback from the health department to ask if our son would be allowed to test out of the extended quarantine, the response was very upsetting. There was not 1 ounce of, "I'm sorry this is happening, but we'll figure it out." Or, "We've never encountered this situation, so we really need to have a deep discussion about it." Their response was that they needed to speak with a different health department representative because apparently the person who our doctor spoke with was not good enough. We also spoke with the head of the health department ourselves, and we were once again told that this is the school district's decision to make. At this point, we were in a state of limbo, being sent back and forth with no one making a decision, and we have yet to receive an answer. And again, our question is, if the school district is not following CDC guidelines, the health department's guidance, or listening to the doctors, who is making the decisions in the best interest of the children? When will you start following the CDC, health department, and experienced physicians' quarantine recommendations? When will you start treating our children like human beings instead of just cases and numbers, and actually take the time to evaluate situations individually and, more importantly, work together with parents, the physicians, the CDC, and health department? These kids need to be in school where they belong, where they are safe as often as possible. We know that we are not the first family this has happened to, and our only hope is that we are the last. Okay, next public comment on agenda items is from Sue Vasallo, 14 Oxbow Lane. I'm not sure what else to say or what else to do. We, the parents, have tried everything. We have provided scientific information about how safe it is for our kids to go to school, offered data about how kids are falling behind academically, shared personal testimonies of our children's declining mental health. We've tried to be respectful and sometimes have been forceful, all to no avail. All has fallen on deaf ears. Parents are hitting a breaking point. We are exasperated and worried. Our children are being robbed of their childhood education, as well as emotional, social, and educational learning experiences that will impact them for the rest of their life. We see our kids' spirits being crushed. We see them frustrated and isolated. They are losing hope. We are losing hope. We are a community in crisis. People are putting their kids in private schools. Some are talking about moving to other towns. I know of families that have moved or are thinking of moving to another state altogether. Why? Because of what is going on in our schools. Our district has failed. Parents have lost faith in the Burnett school system. They no longer trust those in charge. It will take years to rebuild that trust back with the community. We are pleading with you. Please get our kids back to school full time. We understand some people are not comfortable with that. We respect their choices and opinions. Offer them an all virtual option with teachers who are also uncomfortable with going back. But for the rest of us, please do the right thing and give our kids hope, give our kids an education, give them back their future, get them back in school. The next public comment on agenda items is from Lindsay Ario, 157 South Maple. I have a second grader at Oak Street, and I have an incoming kindergartner for September. As you know, this year has been extremely challenging for everyone. I'm concerned about what is on the horizon for September. Is there a definitive plan in place for September 2021 for grades K through 12? If not, I think it is in the best interest of the community, the board, and you, Nick, to get a plan into action. This way, in September, we are not behind like we were in this past fall. If there's no plan and you have nothing ready to execute, why? We would like to know why. We all need to figure out what we will be doing with our children come September. I never thought private school would be a necessity in this school district, but it is becoming alarmingly clear that it might be our only option. We all moved here for the school systems, and unfortunately, I feel it has failed us this year, which is what we are all prepared for in some way, but none of us prepared for a second year of this. If in fact you do have a plan, I think it is necessary and deserved for all of us to see it, understand it, and approve it. Thank you. All right, the next public comment on agenda items is from Aaron Rowan, 83 Church Street. Good evening. My son is a first grader at LCS, started last week on the 5 half-days per week schedule. Snow aside, it's been wonderful. He is thrilled to see his classmates on a regular basis, and his teacher has been very vocal in getting them excited to see them on a regular basis, on a regular everyday basis. Yes, he was on the hybrid schedule before, but he can tell this is different, and he frequently says to me that he's so happy to be back at school, despite having been in a few days per week before. He tells me he's excited to see his best friends every day, and he spent about an hour last week drawing individual Valentines for his friends. He has also repeatedly reminded me today that he has to do his homework tonight. When we drove past his school this week, and he sighed and said, "I love my school." I share these anecdotes because it's the only way that I can express that he is happier. It might be subtle, and we might have just started with being there 5 days again, but I can already see the difference. It feels more normal to him to be going to the same place every day, and I can only hope that it will be 5 full days soon. Mental health and routine, even for the youngest of our school children, is so important. The district must develop a plan and diligently work to return the children of all grades to the classroom this school year. Our kids in all grades deserve nothing less than 5 full days of in-person learning, in addition to the remote option. Thank you. The next public comment is on agenda items is from Colleen G.M. Batista, 305 Lions Road. As private schools have open enrollment happening now, many of us will have to make a difficult decision over the next few weeks. Therefore, it would be great to understand what is being done now to ensure a plan to return full-time in the fall. While I understand you are busy planning for February, March, I think it is imperative that there is a subset of folks who are focusing on the fall. An A plan, a B plan, and a C plan. Of course, if this is happening already, please communicate what you are doing clearly. We have heard that other local towns are surveying their parents now about the fall. Please don't wait until August to think about this. Thank you. Right. Sorry. Just got to go through the new comments here. Okay, next public comment on agenda items is from Cynthia Kirshner, 16 Lenape Court. Last month, I wrote into the meeting asking what Mr. Markarian's plan is to ensure all kids are back full-time in September. This was not answered. I, like so many parents, am at a crossroad. Do we move? Do we send our kids to private school? My children cannot bear another year of this. They are not thriving and my 7-year-old is suffering. We've all heard your obstacles over and over, so can you please explain how you're rectifying these issues to get our kids back into the classroom full time? September will be a year and a half since the start of the pandemic. This seems to be a sufficient amount of time to problem solve. Next public comments, Karen Monk, 489 King George Road. Dear BOE and Mr. Markarian, today my 4th grader became a Spartan. He left Berners Township because our public school failed him. My happy and social boy doesn't thrive on Zoom. He doesn't like being on a screen all day. He missed socializing with his friends and especially missed football and soccer at recess. As a student at St. James, he would now go until 3 p.m. every day of the week. He will sit at his desk around him in plexiglass with no mask. He is safe. The teacher is safe. He had indoor recess and played dodgeball with the grade. He came home from school happy and exhausted. Think about that for a minute. Almost a full year since he had a full day of school with lunch and recess. It takes my breath away. I want to take a minute to thank every staff member and administrator at St. James School. You're doing an amazing job, and students there are so lucky. Next public comment is from Megan Fedor, 26 Victoria Drive. How are we getting grades 6 to 12 back 5 days? We need to start thinking outside the box. Do we rent tents to hold classes outside as it gets warmer? Do we utilize other places, other town spaces, maybe spaces in the town hall? Please communicate with the community if these conversations are already taking place. Will there be summer school for any student that is interested? Are we considering starting next year earlier as other towns are doing? These kids need more class time. Too much time has already been lost. Next public comment is from Stacy Irvine, 42 Mount Airy Road. I noticed that there is a HIB report tonight, which has been rare this school year. I looked up past meeting minutes and discovered there have only been 3 HIB reports in this entire 2020-2021 school year so far. For the same time period last school year, from September 19 through February 10, 2020, there were nearly 3 times as many HIB reports. In fact, HIB reports this year have dropped by 62%. It appears that an unexpected benefit to students learning virtually has been a dramatic decrease in bullying. Our school district has been talking about students' mental health long before there was a pandemic. During normal years, kids were bullied in school. Kids were overwhelmed and stressed in school. Let's not lose sight of the fact that for many students in our school district, virtual school has actually improved their mental health and helped them feel safer. Next public comment is from Rippy Carta, 58 Independence Drive. Thank you to this board for making a great decision in selecting Rashida S. Hira to fill the vacant BOE seat. Both candidates were impressive, and I know that you made the right choice at this time. Thank you for your efforts as you continue to work towards getting our students back to school full time. Please continue to think creatively how to effectuate this goal. Other school districts have tried 1 week on, 1 week off in high school as well as middle school for alternating grade levels. For example, grade 9 and 11 attend in-person school week 1 and grades 10 and 12 on week 2. In middle school, it could be week 1, grade 6, week 2, grade 7, week 3, grade 8. I'd like for you to encourage teachers to be available during the afternoon advisory or help sessions rather than requiring students to make appointments in advance. At times, students do not realize they need help until that particular afternoon. Lastly, inappropriate, rude, and sarcastic comments directed towards virtual students are unproductive, unkind, and rather unnecessary. Let's make sure not to alienate either in-person or virtual students. Thank you again for your hard work and continued efforts. Let's see. I think that is it for public comment on agenda items. Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Syatt. Mr. Markarian, is there anything you'd like to address at this time?
Sure. So it sounds like there's one specific situation with respect to contact tracing that I would investigate on an individual level, which is what I'll try to do, Mr. Syatt, based on that public comment. Maybe you and I will connect and go over that. Obviously, a lot of the other comments are related to trying to get students back to school full time, back to school 5 full days, and the balance were largely about what the plan is for September. Certainly excellent questions. Obviously, the hope for September is that we are having a relatively normal opening, certainly what we all hope to achieve. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but that's certainly what I would believe would happen going forward. I understand, you know, that there are some things that are question marks about that. I could understand, you know, here we are in February, and who would have thought that we'd be where we are now. And lots of folks are asking questions about what does next year hold. And I don't want to make promises that I can't keep, but obviously the goal would be to have a normal opening in September. I mean, my goal for the current year is to end the school year in a way that we would want to see the school year open in September, you know, and we've talked about that at prior board meetings relative to Cali scores getting to green and trying to have students in for full school days before the end of the school year to remind them what that normalcy is of coming to school for a full school day. If we can achieve that by the end of the school year, then I don't see why that wouldn't happen in September. As far as renting tents or using alternative spaces, I really think that, you know, adding additional spaces is not necessarily helpful unless you have the staff to create groups of students to get into those spaces. So I don't think that we'd necessarily be going down that road. And I also know that we've been told that we can't use tents as instructional spaces. There was a question about why students are choosing to stay home. As I mentioned earlier, I understand there is a host of reasons as to why students might be staying home. Maybe it's because you know, their classes don't have a lot of students in them. They don't want to be in a classroom with only a couple other kids. Perhaps their teacher is virtual. So I do understand that there's a multitude of reasons as to why students would not want to come to school right now. Just having to wear a mask all day long could be reason enough for kids not to want to come to school. The MAP testing question, I don't think we took into account, nor would we be able to take into account whether or not students are being tutored. We don't know which students are being tutored, so there's no way to really factor that question into the MAP test results. Somebody, actually the same person mentioned Randolph and New Providence. We can certainly take a look at what they're doing with their teachers. Capital projects, we don't have any plans for major capital projects. I don't think that there are any major capital projects that are holding us up from having students come to school. I think it's really just a matter of health conditions at this point. We have in place, really from a facilities perspective and an HVAC perspective, I think we're actually in pretty good shape because of the work that's gone on over the last several years to update and replace a lot of HVAC equipment the last several summers. So I don't see capital projects on the horizon as an impediment. And that's about all I have on these notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian. With that, I guess we'll go to the next agenda item, which is the approval of minutes. Can I have a motion, please? Mrs. McCune and Mrs. White. Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Zira,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Madam President.
Just a quick note on that. I think probably it's best if we modify Ms. Hira's vote to an abstention since she was not present for those meetings and the minutes that ensued. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Okay, so we're moving on to the Finance Committee report. Mr. Salmon?
No report, just 4 items. The first one is a standing item. The second one is approval of some field trip destinations for the Ridge Dance team this year. The third one is acceptance of a donation from the Liberty Corner PTO for additional playground equipment. Thank you to the PTO. And the addendum is to accept a bequest from the David F. Thompson Living Trust for the Ridge High School Media Center for $15,000 in honor of Richard Thompson, Harold B. Thompson, and Eleanor F. Thompson. So thank you very much to the Thompson family for that bequest.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon. Any questions for Mr. Salmon? So can we have a motion, please? Mrs. Korn and Mrs. White, and a roll call, Mr. McLaughlin, please.
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Zira,
I believe I was told to withhold voting, correct?
you could just say abstain then. Okay,
Abstain.
thank you. Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. The next item is the Personnel Committee. There are 12 items for the, Mr. Syed, there's not an addendum, is there? I didn't see one. Okay, thank you. There are 12 items. Could we have a motion, please? Ms. Schaefer and Ms. McEwen. And we do not have, do we have a Personnel Committee report?
No, because we you're done. You did the last one, right? And then we have a meeting the week after next.
Right. Okay, so then, right, our next meeting is a week from Friday. So, Mr. McLaughlin, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
I'll abstain.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray,
Yes.
Madam President.
Thank you. The next item is the Policy Committee report. Mrs. Korn?
You'll be glad to know there's no policy report today. We met this morning and I'll read them out at the next meeting.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the summary agenda, so I'm just checking, did we have any items to vote on, but we do not. Okay, so then our next item is the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. White?
Curriculum Committee met on February 5th. As a follow-up to what was reported at the previous Board of Ed meeting, there will be changes implemented in 9th grade physical education. Project Adventure is marking period 1 and Health is marking period 4. Physical education for the other 2 marking periods will now be structured differently. Course curriculum will be written during the summer. Students will have 1 course marking period 2 and the other marking period 3. One course will be Introduction to Fitness and Wellness. Students will learn concepts related to overall fitness and wellness, such as muscle endurance and composition, strength, fitness and training, mental health through yoga and mindfulness. Students will develop their own goals and individualized fitness program. Proper use of equipment, exercise design will also be a component. The other course will be Introduction to Sport. This fitness and wellness course will offer individual, dual, or team activities. Short units will introduce and expose students to a variety of sports. Dates for the remaining months of the 2020-21 school year of the committee meetings were shared. Dr. Lazovic presented the Bridge Year Pilot Program. This program is now mandated by the state. The purpose of this program is to provide students in the graduating classes of 2021 and 2022 with the opportunity to offset disruptions to learning opportunities and participation in extracurricular activities that might have resulted from the closure of schools in-person instruction in spring 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to participate, a student has to have met all of their state and local graduation requirements, be 19 years or younger during the entirety of the bridge year, and maintain a GPA of 2.0. A student can then defer graduation from high school for 1 year to participate in an additional year of academic courses and extracurricular activities immediately following senior year. Dr. Lazovic is the Bridge Year liaison and the point of contact for any eligible students to contact. Individual learning plans, called ILPs, stating the purpose and goals for the year must be developed for each participant, and it is recommended quarterly updates take place. During the fall semester, students will take between 9 to 12 credits at Ridge High School, the host high school, and at County College, or combination of the two. However, during the spring semester, all 9 through 12 credits must be taken at a county college in the county in which the high school is located. In addition, students who meet all NJSIAA requirements will be eligible to participate at their host school in spring season athletics. Students may participate in their graduation ceremony at the end of their bridge year or senior year, but diplomas will not be given until completion of the bridge year. Interested students need to apply by February 15th, and ILPs will be drafted by June 1st. The committee discussed what group of students might this law help. Questions arose as to who is responsible for transporting students to and from various community colleges. At this time, there is no clear guidance as to the answers. A presentation on the Bridge Pilot Program will soon be available to parents. Next, we had a scheduling update for the 2021-22 school year. The student parent portal has been set up for students to make their scheduling requests online for the first time this year. The teachers are finalizing the recommendations this week, and it will open Saturday, February 6th for rising sophomores and juniors, and then for freshmen and seniors on Saturday, February 13th. This is the first year working with this program, and up until now, administration has been focused on troubleshooting, but all are feeling good about moving into the next phase with the launch of online scheduling. This past Wednesday, supervisors held virtual meetings to answer any questions parents might have had about this process prior to the portal being open for students. On Monday, meetings with counselors begin. The deadline for course selection changes is April 7th. Once a student enters their desired courses, course requests are locked in, and any changes need to be made by contacting a guidance counselor directly prior to April 7th. Teacher recommendations can be found in Genesis under the scheduling tab. The recommendations are not binding and are meant to be taken as advice or opinion offered to students to help them make decisions about their course selection. Students can choose to follow the teacher recommendations or make a different selection when they meet the course prerequisite. Adjustments were made at the end of last year in terms of honors and AP criteria as a result of the midway change in the learning environment. While we certainly would like to see students qualify for courses, the appeals process will remain an option in June, and adjustments can be made at that point. Students are encouraged to ask teachers any questions about recommendations. Information is available for parents to review in the community bundle as to how to review these recommendations with children. Working on the mock schedule has also been ongoing. This has entailed supervisors reworking rooms and period assignments. Since preliminary work on the schedule began, about 200 changes have been processed. Schedules have been run and rerun in order to analyze patterns, trends, and problems, which will help us when we begin to build the master schedule for 21-22. Each period has been looked at to determine how many open rooms are available, where study halls can be held, and determining capacity for unit lunch. In addition, there's a team of about 20 staff members meeting weekly to review operational pieces of the rotating drop schedule. There is a representative from all departments, and there are a number of subcommittees lending teachers' voices to making recommendations on items such as how to handle abbreviated days or snow days. Monthly updates will continue to be given, and a presentation is being planned for February 22nd. Following the deadline of course selection, the design of the master schedule for the 2021-22 school year will begin. Lisa Vitale gave an update on summer curriculum writing for 2020. She shared that the K-5 curriculum that was written and developed last summer for students in resource room and LLD classrooms in order to best deliver lessons for the current hybrid model that includes blended and virtual learning was completed. New platforms and websites were researched and explored that could complement reading and writing programs such as Lexia, Raz Kids, and Learning A to Z, to name a few. Reading, writing, and math plans for each grade level were created in the event of teacher illness or quarantine. All materials have been organized by grade and subject area in a shared Google folder. Lesson plans were developed for literacy and mathematical skills to utilize per grade during small group afternoon Zoom sessions. K through 2 and first grade have been phased in and are currently in session 5 days. Second grade will begin coming back 5 days on February 17th. Grade 3 through 4 will return to school February 22nd, with 5th grade to follow March 1st. No sweeping changes will be made to the schedule. However, some 3rd through 5th grade staff may need to rework their schedules, such as Quest teachers, because they will no longer have all students at home and will need to adjust to meeting with students in person. There have not been explicit discussions about any changes to homework policies at the elementary level. However, 5th grade may see an increase in homework in preparation for the transition to middle school. Grant Colmer reviewed the criteria for math placement in grades 4 through 9. The goal of all criteria is the appropriate and best placement for each student to be successful. Assessing students accurately looks different this year, as it's difficult to have reliable data when what is going on at home is unclear. As a result of this, placement in Advanced 4 will be delayed until the fall, when all students will be able to be assessed together and ideally in person. At that time, students will be identified for placement through a combination of COGAT and MAP scores. For current 4th graders, in order for students to be considered for Accelerated Math 5, they must take both the Spring MAP and the CTP 5 assessment in person. Students who take Accelerated Math 5 are beginning an extremely rigorous 2-year accelerated track in mathematics. And all specific criteria and rubrics for grades 6 through 9 will be made available. We also had a summer intervention update. The plan is to take a similar approach as last summer, if not the same exact one for K-1 students. Data will be collected in March, and students who fall below the benchmark in terms of phonological awareness and scope sequence skills will be offered the opportunity to receive summer intervention. In March, a variety of screeners such as DIBELS and PASSE will be given to K-1 students. During the summer, teachers will meet with small groups of 2 to 3 students in 45-minute Zoom sessions in the morning. Teachers will be staffed much less ESY, with positions being posted once the needs have been determined. Parent training will also be a component, as it was last summer. Teachers felt the program was successful last summer and are eager for it to be implemented again. This is an optional program, and therefore all students who were identified for eligibility last summer did not participate. Some of those students are currently receiving instructional support, and materials created last summer continue to be used. It was difficult to get data on the students after last summer, as they were not in person school in October. It should be easier next fall to track the students who participate this coming year. In terms of grades 2 through 5, we are only just starting to look at this data. As the budget is developed this winter, we are looking to see if it may be possible to make more resources available for other summer instruction. Depending on financial and staff resources, it may be possible to provide other opportunities for virtual learning in the summer. Data from reading assessments will be analyzed in the spring. We also had a conversation in terms of mid-year status, and grades and grade reporting in Genesis continues to come up. The expectation is that teachers are to enter and publish grades bi-weekly. Some students are reporting this is not happening and they're missing grades. Students are encouraged to reach out to their teacher to inquire about missing grades. Grading timelines can be more variable for some subjects that are project-based and utilize long-term assignments. Teachers do not often put grades in Google Classroom for students. Teachers do often put grades in Google Classroom for students when returning work. While parents do not have access to an individual Google Classroom, a student can provide access. The timely entering of grades for completed assignments and assessments will be reviewed with staff. Group projects also remain a challenge at times, especially in hybrid learning, where it's not always easy to schedule a time to meet virtually with partners. There seems to be an assumption that everyone is always available since students are home, but that is not necessarily the case. Our next meeting will be held March 5th. Anybody have any questions about any of the report?
No questions? That was a lot of information. Thank you, Mrs. White. Okay, if there are no questions, we will move on to the Wellness Committee report, which I think the Wellness Committee just met recently, right? So we're going to hear that report at the next meeting.
Yes, the Wellness Committee, and I'm sorry I did not get those minutes out, but I will. But Mrs. Gray, I believe we have a couple courses that we have to vote on for curriculum.
Oh, you're right. Thank you very much. We need to go back to the curriculum report. I noticed that after Mrs. White was speaking. So could we have a motion to approve the two, is it 2 or 3 course items on the?
Yeah, there are 2 courses.
Two course?
It's one motion.
Okay, can we have a motion?
It's just one item. It has 2 courses, but it's one item.
Sorry, Mrs. Korn and anybody? Mr. Salmon? And just for the benefit of anyone listening who doesn't have the agenda in front of them, the 2 new courses are Advanced Theater Directing and Production and Introduction to Computer Programming. Both new courses for the first one is for 2021-22. I know how that sounds, sorry. And then the second one is for 2022-23.
Mrs. Gray, these were reported at the last meeting, but the course approvals were not on the agenda, so that's why they're here now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so can we have a roll call, please, Mr. McLaughlin?
Ms. Beckman,
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mr. Salmon,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Korn,
Yes.
Ms. Hira,
Abstain.
Mrs. McCune,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray.
Yes.
Madam President,
Thank you. So our next item is liaison committee reports. I'm not sure which, I know do you have anything, Mrs. Richmond, for?
I had attended the Somerset County Ed Services meeting last Wednesday, and they had the same issues with their busing that we had last week with all the snow. And that's really about they also, they have a new vice president. It's, oh my God, I can't think of the name. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But that's really all that happened at that meeting.
Okay. And Mrs. Korn, did you have Municipal Alliance recently?
Might have. I have nothing to report right now.
Okay, okay. I don't know. I'm just gonna, because it's the timing of.
Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, plus, I went through. I want to
I think-
apologize to the Municipal Alliance this week because I think I missed a meeting.
All right, well, that's okay. We all miss meetings. I just wanted to share that I actually tuned in for the Upstanders presentation. I think several of us did. It was eye-opening and depressing all at the same time, but really worthwhile. So if anyone watching or, among the board members has the opportunity, I think it was time well spent. And
I think it is. I think I think it's taped, and I think it's.
It is taped.
Available.
But the way it works, you have to request access to it, and you get it for a period of time, so they can protect their content.
It's a good combination with watching that, and then what's the other one about online? Oh God, I can't think either. About the dangers of the computers and how they try to control the kids.
Social dilemma.
Huh?
The social dilemma.
Yes, it'd be a good combo with that. Sorry, I'm tired today.
Well, it was definitely, like I said, eye-opening and, very concerning, of course. And I just wanted to, say that it was appreciated that you brought it to our attention through the Municipal Alliance. So I know it was pretty well advertised, but my source of that information was here, so I appreciate that. Okay, and then now we are up to public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Fox, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
Yes, we do. I'll let her in now.
Okay.
I see that she's connecting. Here you are. Hello, Grace. You are in. I think they are now muted.
Hi, Mrs. Fox. It's
Hello.
Nicole Alessino. Thank you for this opportunity. I just wanted to read a text that I had sent earlier. It wasn't covered. Potentially it's because it was a non-agenda item. But I want to thank all the teachers and coaches and staff that have worked diligently under extraordinary circumstances to educate and care for the children in this community. Your efforts and energy to connect with our children is not unnoticed or unappreciated. And by staff, I meant to include administrators as well. So allow me to expand my text. My question to the board is regarding the criteria used for making the determination that schools are safe to reopen for middle and high school students. Mr. Markarian spoke of using the Cali map colors as a guide in the last Board of Ed meeting and suggested that when the map becomes yellow, then the time will be right to reopen. My question relates to the population and the morbidity and mortality figures that the map tracks. Why are school openings hinging on data which may be driven from most vulnerable populations, such as the elderly and those with chronic underlying disease, and those living in residential facilities that may make up the mortality and morbidity data? If data is driving the determination of when schools reopen, it would be appreciated if the board should use data that accurately, apples to apples, reflects local conditions. How many teachers have been vaccinated to date? That was something that was understood to be in the process of being counted from the last meeting. I think parents would like an update on that. And what is the number needed to treat, i.e. to be vaccinated in the teacher population before in-person education can safely resume? This may sound a little extreme, but can vaccination be mandated in order to get the district back to normal conditions in terms of in-person attendance and education? And if that's unlawful, can those who choose not to be vaccinated volunteer to be assigned to virtual classroom education? Last but not least, and I think this often does not get commented on, but I think it's an important group, the stakeholders of the teachers themselves. How satisfied are the teachers by their level of engagement with students now that students, as of the last Board of Education meeting, 45% of whom are virtual now? And I think that's a big growth rate from September, when I believe it was estimated that 10% of the school population was going to be virtual. Thank you for your response.
Thank you for joining us.
That is the last public comment in the waiting room. This is great.
That was it?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Syatt, do we have any written public comment?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
All right. Let me start here. Right. Okay. First public comment on non-agenda item is from Catherine Morath at 43 Dykeman Place. My name is Kat Morath and I'm a junior on the Ridge track team. COVID has negatively impacted the track team and I significantly. Our spring season was canceled, preventing us from enjoying a season we all look forward to. And our current winter season is being negatively impacted as well. Our current season was pushed back 2 months by the NJSIAA, and although this was out of everyone's control, it was still very frustrating and upsetting for all of us. Although our season has finally begun, we have been forced to practice in our senior parking lot instead of on the track due to the large amount of snow on the track that we are currently prohibited from removing. Our season was postponed, shortened significantly, and now we are unable to practice properly because we cannot use our track. By allowing us to shovel the track, it would allow us to get back the fraction of our season we are left with. The snow is going to keep accumulating, and with the temperature remaining under freezing, the snow is not going to melt for weeks. It has been a tough year for all of us dealing with COVID and the changes it's brought to all of our lives. So I'm asking for your help to get us back as much of our season and track related opportunities as we can by allowing us to shovel up the track. Next public comment is from Suzanne Gilligan, 44 Chimney Ash Farm Road. My child is a junior at Ridge High School and is part of the track team. It has come to my attention that the team has not been allowed to clear the track with shovels and has been left with no other option than to walk over the track until it melts off in weeks. This method is both a waste of our time for our children and is upsetting for me to see my child's valuable time to train go to waste. In order for the track to be cleared, the only plausible way for this to happen would be to shovel it. The main concern I have heard of regarding this method is the damage to the track. I have seen on numerous occasions soccer goals being dragged across the track and even people driving across it. A few plastic shovels should be the last of our worries. Furthermore, I have spoke to the track coaches and I'm sure they are more than capable of making sure that the track doesn't get damaged in the process. With this season being shortened in the first place, the amount of time our children will have to spend time getting meaningful exercise and training will be reduced to nothing unless something is changed. Okay. Next public comment is from Lauren Morath at 43 Dykeman Place. Hello, board members. My name is Lauren Morath, and I'm a freshman on the girls' track team. This is my first season of many, and I was extremely disappointed when it was postponed 2 months initially. To top things off, the track is covered in an unusually heavy amount of snow, and it seems as if it's going to accumulate over the coming weeks rather than melting. We have had no choice but to run on the senior parking lot, which is not at all what I was expecting of the sports at Ridge High School. I'm writing this email to ask if we could please shovel the track because the current circumstances are impeding on all aspects of our sport, our ability to effectively get into shape, and our ability to compete with other teams. All other sports, for example, basketball, have an appropriate place to practice in the past weeks, but when it comes to track, nobody seems to care. I'm not asking you to make this an official rule. I'm just hoping you can make an exception for this rough year. I hope you can consider this when making the decision to let us shovel the track. The next comment is from Jacob Bijakovic. This is Jacob Bijakovic from Ridge High School. This matter concerns the well-being, 159 Woodward Lane, I'm sorry. This matter concerns the well-being of the track and field team. These multiple snowstorms have provided us with no place to be able to practice and continue our season. The seniors of Ridge High School are in their last year before moving on, and the fact that they are not able to practice is an utter shame. This predicament has influenced me to bring this matter toward the Board of Education, in which I request for the board to take action and allow us to shovel the track or provide assistance in removing the snow so that practice can commence once again. I understand the dire circumstances people are in due to this pandemic, but I feel as if it's my responsibility to express concerns about this issue at hand. I implore that action must be taken so that the season can start soon. So not only the seniors can have one last season, but the team can as well. Next public comment doesn't have an address, so I will not read that one. Let's see. Next public comment is from Jeff Way, 21 Handsome Road. Dear Mr. Markarian of the Board of Education, snow removal on the track has been and continues to be an issue. This email will entail several reasons why the Ridge Runners Board should be able to find a solution for the snow removal of the track. The Ridge Runners Board has already reached out to the track manufacturer to understand the guidelines for snow removal. The board members created shovels that adhere to those guidelines. A board member has a letter in hand stating that shoveling, leaving an inch of snow on the track is within guidelines. I'm fully cognizant that we need to maintain the investment that we have at Ridge, but there has to be a way of maintaining the investment while still using it. The track team needs the track to work out as well as host profiting meets. Winter track is a hallmark to some of the most successful teams. The track is just as important to the runners as it is to our district. Our kids are now scouting other towns to try to continue their workouts. Both Burnersville and Summit have removed their snow. In addition to this, during this pandemic, mental health has been a hot button issue. Running has been an amazing outlet for my son to relieve his stress. It has kept him mentally and physically fit. By taking away the ability to run on the track, 100 kids will not have the mental release that track provides for them. 100 kids will be floundering, waiting for spring when hopefully the snow will melt. Each year, we can't hope that bad weather doesn't impact us. I know my son is incredibly frustrated not being able to use the track. We need to proactively solve this issue. Please help us work with you to find solutions to remove the snow. What is the main issue so we can find ways to resolve it, and what are some ways that we can help resolve this issue? If it is a warranty issue, why isn't providing the letter from the manufacturer sufficient? Please let us find some solutions so this talented team can get back to work and make Ridge and Maskey Ridge so very proud. The next public comment is from Jim Barna, 30 Sunnybrook Road. We need to move forward with a solution for shoveling Ridge High School's track now before it is too late to benefit from it this season, and so we don't have to keep pushing it off year after year to the detriment of hundreds of track athletes that deserve more from this school. One, it's incredibly dangerous for our athletes to be running on roads that are icy, narrow, and have poor visibility from high snowbanks. A student is going to get hit by a car one of these days, and the school will be responsible. Two, Ridge is the only school in the area that does not allow snow removal of their track, which means that our track and field team is at a competitive disadvantage during a snowy winter. It is impossible to train properly for track events without a track. The timing, pacing, and feel of a track is as important to runners as a field is to a football player. Three, it is extremely important for coaches to be able to actually coach their athletes. Without a track to measure the athlete's progress and accurately keep times, it makes it impossible to monitor athletes and give athletes training plans. This is especially important this year as some of our runners are recovering from COVID and need more monitoring than normal to safely train and progress at a gradual rate. We have a very simple, inexpensive solution that adheres to manufacturer guidelines for snow removal and can be implemented immediately if given approval. Please let our kids have their track back and not let another year of doing nothing go by. Next public comment is from Andrew McCabe, 28 Colonial Drive. Hello, my name is Andrew McCabe. I'm in the 11th grade and a member of the Ridge High School cross country and track team. Over the course of the past few years, shoveling the track has been a persistent issue for the winter and spring track team. Snow has often prevented us from practicing efficiently for days on end. However, this year it is looking more like weeks. Many of my teammates and I have resorted to branching out to other school tracks and using their facilities. However, this is not an adequate solution, and we should not have to hope for other schools' understanding because our school will not let us shovel our own track. The track team has produced some of the best athletes to ever come through Ridge and continues to produce success on all levels. In addition to physically, the track team helps many of its members mentally too. It helps many people relieve stress and find a positive outlet to convey their energy. Also, several track athletes, including myself, are hoping to run at a high level in college, but we have not been able to race a track meet in almost a year due to the pandemic. However, now that the school has come up with a COVID-safe way to practice, we can't even practice or race because of snow. It will be extremely hard to race times fast enough to be admitted by college track teams if we cannot even practice or race on our own track. It has been established that shoveling snow within an inch of the track and letting the remainder of the snow melt away will not violate the warranty. So we must actively come up with a solution and fast before the already shortened season is over. I would appreciate a quick resolution. The next public comment is from Evan Wu, 3 Scotsman Way. My name is Evan Wu, and I'm a junior who runs track at Ridge High School. My teammates and I are unable to use the track to train right now because we are not allowed to clear the snow. The track is very icy when we are not allowed to clear it with shovels, and we aren't able to accomplish everything we need to do to prepare when we can't even run on the track. Please let us shovel the track. The next public comment is from Janet Wesselman and Mike Duran at 132 Thackeray Drive. Dear Mr. Markarian and the Board of Education, snow removal on the track has been and continues to be an issue. The Ridge Runners Board has reached out to the track manufacturer to understand the guidelines for snow removal. The board members configured shovels that adhere to these guidelines. A board member has sent a letter in hand, stating that shoveling and leaving an inch of snow on the track is within guidelines. I'm fully cognizant that we need to maintain the investment that we have at Ridge, but there has to be a way of maintaining the investment while still using it. The track team needs the track workout as well to host revenue producing meets. You know what, this email is a bit, seems like it's a bit redundant. I might have read this one already. Okay, here's the track program keeps individuals mentally fit, keeps them focused in school, keeps them safe during this pandemic. Ridge Track and Field program is incredibly successful. Our program has about a half dozen kids who could potentially get D1 commits over the next few years. By not removing the snow, our kids will be disadvantaged as they try to compete. Did you realize that the boys team is nationally ranked in 4x800 and distance medley relays? Boys team ranked 3rd in New Jersey, boys team 2nd in public schools. Girls have 2 returning All-Americans, number 2 girls returner in jumps. Please help us work with you to find solutions to remove the snow. Does the grounds crew need to do the snow removal? If so, is it a cost factor? Do students need to volunteer? What is the main issue so we can find ways to resolve it? If it is a warranty issue, why isn't providing the letter from the manufacturer sufficient? Please let's find some solutions so this talented team can get back to work and make Ridge and Basking Ridge very proud. I read those 2 earlier. Okay, next public comment is from Doug Roberts, 79 Spencer Road. This pertains to the Ridge boys and girls winter track teams. These teams are the only Ridge High School winter indoor sports teams that practice outside. They don't have anywhere to practice indoors. Can't there be a way to clear 2 lanes of the outdoor track so they can actually practice? I understand the issue that the track might sustain damage from the shovels or plows, but these kids have already lost 1 outdoor track season and most of this year's indoor track season due to COVID. Why not help them out this year and clear the track? Let's make this about the kids and do something positive for them in these tough times we're in. Next public comment is from Rowan Hawar, 29 Princeton Court. I'm a junior at Ridge High School who's in track and field. My team and I are unable to run on the track due to the large amount of snow on the track. Thus, we cannot train properly in an already shortened season, and to simply let the snow melt by itself would take away a big chunk of the track season. This is why I asked for the track to be shoveled so that the track team can have some sort of season. Next public comment, Emma Clark, 34 Cherry Lane. Hi, hello board members. My name is Emma Clark. I'm a junior on the winter track team at Ridge High School. The track has been covered in snow because of the recent snowstorm and does not look to be melting anytime soon. There is also more snow in the forecast for the near future, which will only delay our use of the track even more. I would like to be able to use the shovels on the track because with such large accumulations of snow, there is no way to kick the snow off the track. If the snow is not removed from the track under these cold temperatures, it will freeze and make it nearly impossible to move, and it would take weeks to melt. Since we can't use the track, we've had to use the senior parking lot instead, but that has brought many concerns about injuries, with sprinters having to run on concrete surface rather than the soft track. It is already devastating that our season was delayed by 2 months, but this was out of our control because of the pandemic. The snow, on the other hand, has delayed our start even more, but it is something that can be fixed if you give us permission to use shovels to clear the track and make it usable again. Thank you for your time. Next public comment is from Grace LaCapra, 3 Hampton Court. My name is Grace LaCapra. I'm a junior captain on the Ridge track and field team. I can speak for our entire team when I say that not having a track available to us because of the significant amount of snow is extremely disrupting. Since we are unable to shovel the snow from the track, this causes an even greater disruption. We are forced to practice in the parking lots of Ridge. Most of my teammates and I have been anxious to get back to running in order to create a sense of normalcy in our lives amidst this global pandemic. I can advocate that running assists greatly with keeping my mental health in check and allows me a sense of release. With the amount of snow that is currently on the track and the amount that is scheduled to still occur, not having the ability to shovel has the potential to ruin our season. We are simply asking for you to say yes to allowing us to shovel the track. We would take care of the shoveling and it would cost you nothing. We are confident we can do so carefully as no one cares about the track more than we do. Your simple yes can change the entire course of our season in a positive way. Let's see, did I read this one already? Okay, the next one is from Ryan Hargy, 306 Penns Way. As a member of the Ridge track and field team, we have no place to practice. While other sports have facilities to practice with, the track team is stuck running in the parking lots. This may seem like a great alternative. However, running on the asphalt can be harmful. It isn't all that pleasant. Many sports have had to adjust due to the pandemic, and the track season was pushed back 2 months. Combined with the recent snowfall and the inability to clear the track team has been unable to have productive practices. In past years, the team would walk on the track in the snow, hoping each step would somehow clear the track. I know that I and all the other members of the team are proud to have such a nice and well-maintained track, but there is no use in a track that is covered in snow. Please allow us to clean the track with shovels instead of walking in the snow for an hour. It would mean a lot to everyone involved with the Ridge track and field team. Thank you. Did that one already. Next public comment. There's no address on this one. I won't read it. The next public comment, okay, is from Lily Lorio, 492 King George Road. Hello, board members. My name is Lily Lorio, and I'm a senior captain of the Ridge High School track team. Last year, when spring track was canceled, I was crushed, and since then, I have been working hard to have successful winter and spring track seasons. Having the season pushed back by the NJSIAA while out of our control was devastating and felt like the tipping point for me personally. Track is my main source of socialization at the moment because I'm very careful about COVID, and not being able to see my friends and teammates has had an extremely negative impact on my mental health. I just want everything to be back to normal and know that isn't completely possible, but there are some things you can do. The first week of practice, we haven't been able to do much because we've been forced to run warm-ups and workouts in a senior parking lot. It is very disappointing, and it feels like the track team is at the bottom of everyone's list because every other team has an appropriate practice space. I ask that you allow the track team to shovel the track because looking at the current weather forecast, we might not be able to get the track for weeks. The snow is not melting and it's just going to accumulate. We already have a short season, so I hope you take this into consideration when you decide to let us shovel or leave us on our own once again. Thank you for your time. The next public comments. No address on this one. Okay. I read that already. No address on this one either. Okay. Next public comment is from Ann Pinto, 16 Berkeley Circle. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Markarian and Mr. Syed. In 2018, a new outdoor track was installed at Ridge High School. That winter, the track team was literally locked out, not being permitted to clear the track of snow via plastic shovel while under the watchful eye of coaches, which was the standard practice for many years. The surface, it was said, may be harmed by the plastic shovel. While shoveling was not permitted, metal benches, goals, and utility vehicles, gators, were permitted to be placed and parked on the track. These items are routinely found on the track today, leaving dents and markings. The track team has gone to great lengths to brainstorm solutions after contacting the track manufacturer and getting their okay to shovel the track down to a 2-inch depth of snow. Several parents designated special wheeled shovels with a 2-inch clearance on the bottom to keep it from hitting the track surface. How is it okay that kids with a vested interest in maintaining the track be locked out and not permitted to shovel with a shovel that protects the track, unlike metal benches, goals, and gators? Why are we still asking to be heard with this concern in 2021? The kids need to get back on the track. Other schools have been able to figure it out. Let's do the same. Thank you. Oh, that one. I don't think I read this one. Next public comment is from Linda Chen, 10 Hampton Court. Thank you for the opportunity to make this comment and address my concerns in regard to the current state of our school. First, I'm happy to hear that my 3rd grader will soon be returning to school 5 days a week, but I have a real concern that it's only part-time. Also, I am concerned that my 7th grader is only getting the equivalent of 3 full days of school a week. We are now in the 3rd quarter of the year, more than halfway through the school year, yet we are still running on a part-time schedule. Why is this the case when we are rated as one of the highest school systems in New Jersey? In conversing with my friends who live in New Jersey and New York, all their kids are in school full-time. Whether it be in school or virtual, they are provided a full-time schedule. In fact, there are districts that have took the steps to plan out for 2021, 2022 school year already, where they have planned to start school in August and take away certain holidays to make up for lost times. Has Berners Township started planning for the next school year? If not, why not? Is one of the top-rated school districts in New Jersey. Shouldn't we be the leader in this, provide an example of what is possible, and set the highest standards for others to follow? Thank you for your time. I sincerely hope that you will make every effort to bring our kids back to school full-time, ideally in school, and that planning is started for next year. We cannot and should not put our children's education second. Next public comment is from Alexa Mark, 140 White Neck Road. Hello board members, I hope all is well. I'm Alexa Mark and I'm a member of the winter track and field program at Ridge High School. Last year, due to COVID, spring track and field was ultimately canceled, pausing any progress that I made during winter season. Having this season pushed back was completely out of our control, but with the snow covering the track, we are still unable to fully train. As this is my senior year, it is very disappointing that the snow is pausing any future improvement or full training. I ask that you allow the track team to shovel the track, as the future forecast will not allow us to practice anytime soon. We already have a short season, so I hope you will take this into consideration as you make your decision. Thank you. Next public comment is from Jennifer LaCapra, 3 Hampton Court. Can I read that? Good evening. On behalf of the Ridge High track team, I'm asking for you to consider giving the kids permission to shovel the track. Because of the snow and the forecast in the coming days, the boys and girls teams are without a practice space, and there is the potential for them to lose their season. A very simple yes, which costs you no money or time, will benefit these kids in a profound way. They are willing to shovel the track on their own, willing to be supervised in any way you require, and can do so without damage to the track. They care about the track more than anyone. One simple yes would significantly improve the mental and physical well-being of about 100 students and provide a sense of normalcy in an otherwise disappointing year. Track is the only sport without a practice space. They need this. Please consider this small yes in a year where all they have heard has been no. Thank you. The next public comment is from Jennifer Cutta, 151 Thackeray Drive. To BOE members and Mr. Markarian, I'm writing to understand why children in special education, specifically in self-contained classrooms, are not being discussed during meetings around the efforts to extend their learning day to a full day. These children need to be in school a full day. While you continue to slowly bring more gen ed kids in, there has been no mention of extending the day for this population of children who desperately need to be in school all day. It saddens me to see that no one on the board mentions this population or advocates for them. Many of these parents rely on the schools to help maintain simple tasks for their children. This is time the students will never get back, and unfortunately, many will lose the skills they have struggled for years to achieve. In the past, this issue has been brought up, and the answer was that they didn't want to create more moving parts for students in the buildings with different bell times. There is no excuse for this group not to be back full days, and this needs to be addressed tonight. These children have been in 5 half days successfully with no problems. They take their masks off for snack, and many of them do not tolerate a mask all day, yet the classes have remained open. To extend the day for this population is not too much to ask and should be considered. I would love for the BOE members to better represent this population behalf, as it seems like they're slipping through the cracks. Next public comment is from Cynthia Kirshner. I live at 16 Lenape Court. Last month, I wrote into the meeting asking what Mr. Markarian's plan is to ensure all kids are back full-time in September. This was not answered. I, like so many parents, am at a crossroad. Do we move? Do we send our kids to private school? My children cannot bear another year of this. They're not thriving, and my 7-year-old is suffering. We've all heard your obstacles over and over, so can you please explain how you are rectifying these issues to get our kids back into the classroom full time? September will be a year and a half since the start of the pandemic. This seems to be a sufficient amount of time to problem solve. Okay, just catching up here. Next one is from Susan Roos, 57 Old Coach Road. Dear board members and Mr. Markarian, when do you expect some clarity around AP exams? There are currently multiple options, several occurring at the same time as each other and the same time day as the senior prom. These seniors have lost so much already. Please move quickly to figure this out and communicate to them, as it is causing an enormous amount of stress. On top of the stress they are already feeling from the college process, no real senior year, etc. Thank you. Next public comment, Abby Plaza 6, Frederick Court. Hi, I'm a senior and I have been continually disappointed by the lack of action to get students back in school 5 days a week. I have heard meeting after meeting where you discuss why we can't go back to school, but the stats have shown that schools are safe. I'm sure if any of the board members have kids in school, they know how unhealthy it is for us to be spending this much time alone and online. As a senior who's living it, I can attest to the fact that virtual school has had a negative impact on my health, and I feel like a complete zombie with aching eyes. Please consider these points so that they don't have to hear another 6 months of unproductive discussions, or please stop having meetings until you have a plan to get us back. My main question is, why are you so afraid to send students back to school? As FDR said, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. Please, for my sake and for the other students at Ridge, have the courage to let us go back. Thank you. Next public comment is from Kim Carroll, 26 Lindbergh Lane. I just wanted to say thank you to all the staff and teachers in our district for doing their best under extremely difficult circumstances. While I know the hybrid schedule is not ideal for my son, I am grateful for your measured and careful approach to returning kids to our school so that our children don't have to bear the weight of having caused the death of a member of their extended family by being an asymptomatic carrier. Next public comment is from Mark Matarazzo, 29 Spencer Road. Members of the BOE and Mr. Markarian, I have been reviewing the data on the COVID case dashboard, which is presented very nicely. However, I have noticed a glaring data error on some very basic numbers. The total students in our district in the dashboard is listed as 4,849. But if you then add up the total number of students per school in the dashboard, it only adds up to 4,846, which is 3 students short. There is also a problem with the staff members. Total in the dashboard list staff is 815, but added up per school, it only adds up to 789, which is 26 staff short. I have seen the total district students on the dashboard fluctuate, but the 3-student discrepancy always exists. For example, last week it was 4852 total, but adding schools together was 4849. This week the total is listed as 4849, but added together it is 4846. There are always 3 students missing and 26 staff members missing in the calculation. The flip-flopping of the school student total numbers week after week, always with a discrepancy, is concerning as it indicates problems with the data. You may not be aware of that discrepancy or attribute it to it as a small oversight. However, what I see it as inaccurate data that has been presented to the public. We trust you to present us with accurate data so we can be educated on what is happening in our community and make informed decisions. However, when the very basic calculations of the data are not correct, all we see is data that we cannot trust. If the total student numbers within the dashboard itself aren't tied out properly, what other numbers are not correct? I would assume percentages are off, maybe the data collection entry process is flawed as well. From a raw data perspective, most likely the value of school for the missing 3 students and 26 staff is blank or null, causing them not to be grouped properly, which is also going to impact your other calculations. I believe the public is being inadvertently presented with data that has not been reviewed and double-checked for accuracy. Please do a thorough audit of all the data and correct any issues that exist. I want to be able to look at the dashboard and be confident that I can trust it, which right now is impossible to do when some simple basic addition is wrong. Next, public comment doesn't have an address, so I won't read that one. And neither does this one. And that is all for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Syatt. I don't know where you want to start. Mr. Markarian, do you have any comments that you would like to address? I know I have a couple of questions, but I'd be happy to wait until you address any that you'd like.
Sure. So there was a comment about the Cali scores and using local data and trying to be specific to Bernard's, and you know, I appreciate that. You know, we have limited metrics that have been associated with school opening. The Cali score is one of them. It's part of the NJDOH documentation that was provided to local health departments to guide school districts in terms of responses tied to being in a low, high, very high status, according to those Cali scores, which is, I think, really what draws us to it as at least a reference point. But I agree that it's important to talk to the local health officials about what's going on locally as well. Vaccinations, I don't think we have a count in particular at this point as to how many staff members have received vaccinations. I know that we have a very low number. I don't know, Mr. Side, probably less than 10 that we even know of at this point.
Yeah, it's very low. And of course, they can't, unless they're in the high risk category, they can't officially get the vaccine at this point anyway.
Eligible yet.
Right. So the only ones that have actually gotten it are those in the high risk.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, ballpark high risk is what, 70 people? Maybe?
It's less than 5% of the total staff.
Yeah.
Less than.
So, you know, you're talking 95% of the staff are not even eligible yet to get the vaccine. Yeah, lots of comments about the track. I don't know what to say, except that goes back to ground that's been covered a multitude of times as to why we don't allow students to shovel the track. There was a question about AP exams. I don't know if you have any info on that. Do you, Ms. Fox?
Sure. The College Board released a lot of information last week about how they're going to conduct testing this spring with, as that comment mentioned, a multitude of options. Right. So we received that Thursday. We happen to have, you know, Mrs. Rayfield, who has worked for the College Board, and we are plowing through those options and discussing it with the administration to work on, you know, just what that comment is asking for, some clarification on our plans. It seems that the schools will be provided with some flexibility in what we schedule and allow, but we want to make sure we, you know, understand everything correctly before we make some decisions.
There was a comment there at the end about the data dashboard. Obviously, we can go back and double check to see if something's wrong that's causing something not to tie out properly on the worksheets. You had a question. I think Mrs. Gray said you had a question on something.
I do. I have a compound question regarding the track and the tarp specifically. The board, I believe, purchased a tarp for the purpose of covering a section of the track so that we could allow members of the track team or representatives from the parent group to safely shovel. And I gather it wasn't employed in this case because I don't think we'd be having this conversation, but there was much conversation about this over a great deal of time. I guess 2 seasons ago, was it last? I don't even remember. So I'm wondering if we have touched base with whomever was expected to put that tarp down and inquired as to why it didn't get put down. It seemed like there was plenty of advance notice, although I know that it was over the weekend. So I don't know if there was some effort to preserve it from being put down when the track could still be used. And what exactly is the situation with any warranty on the track? Does it expressly prohibit, does someone ask that question, snow removal with shovels or other devices?
Nick, I can jump in as far as the tarp deployment. I reached out to the Aramark facilities director, Mr. O'Reilly. His crew is responsible for the deployment of the tarp and for the cleaning of the snow after the tarp has been laid and it snows. There's an established procedure that we established years ago, is in the snow plan. I haven't received a response from him yet as to why that did not happen, but we are pursuing that inquiry.
And do you recall, I mean, I know this is territory we covered a couple years ago in great depth in multiple finance committee meetings, multiple Board of Education meetings. And I don't remember off the top of my head about the terms of the warranty or not. And I thought the purpose of the tarp wasn't actually to allow for shoveling.
It wasn't.
I don't think we ever got to the point where we agreed to allow anyone to shovel. The goal of the tarp, if I remember correctly, was to have a protective layer over the track so that we could use
We purchased a snowblower to go to work in conjunction with that. It was part of the plan. It was something that was actually vetted by the engineering firm that designed the track itself.
Right.
So.
I see Mrs. McKeon's hand up and I'm kind of speechless, so
Yeah,
please go right ahead.
my recollection is that we were, when we had all those discussions, we didn't think that shoveling was an option because it would damage the track and void the warranty, which is why we looked at the snow blower tarp option. So what is the situation with the warranty that people are writing about? Is there something different now that we didn't know then about the warranty?
I can't really speak to what other people may have and how they've interpreted what information and communication they've had and who they spoke with. I mean, we did our own research with the engineering firm and with the company at the time. And that was what was presented, as Nick indicated, in multiple discussions with the board and also with the committees years ago. So it's not changed. And
I see Mrs. Corn's hand.
Yeah, in some of those letters, they were saying that, okay, I guess there's a track board, right? And they said that they reached out to the manufacturer and then the manufacturer told them that there's a special kind of shovel they could make and they made it. Does that sound like that what they were saying? Is that, and then they said they can shovel within an inch, leave an inch of snow, and that wouldn't, I don't know, like how do we, and they said they had a letter from the manufacturer. Has anyone seen the letter from the manufacturer saying that this is the case? And is there like some kind of like a deposit that may put down in case it does get damaged? That I don't know. I'm trying to, come to a conclusion that we don't have to, everyone doesn't have to be tortured every year if it snows. So
every snowfall, not every year, every freaking snowfall, we have to
there has
talk
to be
about
a
this
better
because
solution than what we're doing right now.
I just can't comprehend. The snow fell a week ago and we still don't have a response from Aramark why they didn't do something prior to the snowfall. It's just mind-boggling. It's just absolutely mind-boggling.
So can the
Does
snow
anyone have any-
blower not be used at all now? Because I don't understand why we can't get Aramark out there. I mean, if this is their job.
Although it's snow blower was supposed to go after the tarp was laid down. The snow blower was supposed to drive over top of the tarp.
The reason we could certainly investigate that, I think there are a couple of considerations. One was, why was the tarp to be there? One was so that you wouldn't have ice and snow adhering directly to the track surface. That's number one. I mean, if anyone's snow blown their own driveway, you know that if you wait a few days and you go through, it's kind of hard to get down to the immediate surface because what's underneath has had some melt and some compaction. So that was one of the reasons it was there. The other was that it was intended to protect against any potential spillage from the tractor. You know, we could certainly take a risk of doing that if we wanted to, but you know, you may have, that was the concern we had was, you know, what if oil drips from the tractor? What if gasoline drips from the tractor? These are not things that are supposed to be on the track. And I know I've heard some comments about things being dragged across the track. And, you know, I wish we knew about them more often because we'd go directly after Aramark for how they're, you know, getting things across the track. They do have boards that they're supposed to use when they drag things across the track. If that's not happening, you know, and we aren't informed of that by the coaches or someone else, we don't know that that's happening. But that doesn't mean that it's correct or that we should further, you know, pursue a route that, you know, would be contrary to the proper care and treatment of that track. So, you know, that's my comment with respect to those comments about other things being dragged across the track. It doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, shoveling is, you know, acceptable because other things are being done that aren't necessarily appropriate. However, I fully understand and appreciate the need and desire to get the snow off. The problem is Aramark is missing in action on this. We are looking into this with them. It was a multi-day event, and in all fairness, you know, we had some more snow again this weekend. So, you know, we're trying to kind of manage multiple things. I am trying to get an answer from them on that. We will look into whether the snow blower can be used without it. I think there'll be some risk, but you know, we can see how compacted the snow is. My concern at this point is normally those procedures call for them to be in there clearing within 48 hours after the snowfall at the latest. And the reason for that is the snow doesn't compact. Again, if you've done your own driveway, you know that it's a lot easier to get up a heavy snowfall and it's not crusted and melted and frozen, you know, from being in the sun for several days if you get after it immediately. And that's how a snowblower operates best. It's less likely to dig in and do damage.
It's already compacted. They walked all over it anyway.
Well, now
I
yeah,
saw-
that makes it, you know, pretty much, you know, it's going to make it very difficult to use a snowblower on if it's compacted because people have been packing it down. But
Ms.
we can look
Schaefer?
at it. But the bottom line is Aramark is responsible for that. They have it's part of the snow plan. They've known that. They've had it. They've deployed it in the past. So you know, why it wasn't done, I don't have an answer yet, but there are lots of things, unfortunately, that, you know, we ask Aramark to do and they don't do. And then we find out after the fact. We can't always tell them everything to do beforehand, basically. They have a snow plan that we give them every year. Our biggest challenge, frankly, when a storm of that size comes is to make sure that they're going to get ahead of the storm in terms of the cleaning and bringing people in. You know, that was And are they coordinating with DPW about the cleaning of the lots? And, you know, that is what we're trying to do with them primarily. I'm not sure why they didn't get it deployed. I'll get an answer. They know about it. They have a responsibility. Unfortunately, they didn't do it. There are lots of things they don't do.
Okay, Ms. Schaefer, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but I understand. And I think that they're going to say, gee, sorry, we forgot. But that doesn't solve this problem. And this is Aramark's problem. So hold them to the fire, get and figure something else out. If we have to send the track team to another track to practice, then we should pull money from Aramark. I mean, this is inexcusable. So, you know, we got.
It wouldn't be the first time that we've held Aramark's feet to the fire. If, you know, you're not on the finance committee, but many times I've held their feet to the fire and made them pay for other things. So it's a possibility, but I think, you know, that would be dependent upon, you know, the director of athletics coming back to us and saying, I've got an option to get you in some, you know, the team in someplace else, and, you know, it's going to cost us, and that's fine. You know, if that's the case. I mean, the problem is if the snow is compacted at this point because people have been walking on it, and now you've got, you know, 18 inches of snow that's been compacted. The snow blower is not going to readily remove that safely, nor will shoveling either, because you're going to have to really dig into it to get it out. If it's anything like what I had in my driveway.
Right. I'm not in favor of damaging the track, but, you know, if now we should say to the track team, you know, can you go back to Mr. Shello and talk to him about options, then that's what needs to happen. Or at the very minimum, make sure that the senior parking lot is cleared enough so that they can actually run in it too. I mean,
I think they've had some challenges with that as well, frankly. I mean, if you've been around with the snow, if you remember that Aramark doesn't clean that, the township does. Okay, that's our agreement with the township. And given the fact that probably in the last week, we've had closer to 30 inches of snow, if you add in the weekend snow, we've got mountains of snow there and no place to store it. So that's part of the problem. And you're going to continue to have, melt and runoff from that, unfortunately. The only thing I can ask them to do is to solve for it. I really think that, the parking lot is it's not even a good second option for this under the conditions for running. I fully understand that. It's like trying to run. I used to be a runner myself when I still had good knees. So I get it. But, I think the best option would be if, our athletic director and the coaches reached out to their colleagues to see if there are other alternatives that we can, where we can go and share, because we have other school districts that use our facilities during the year for athletics. We have, Watchung Regional High School has traditionally used our gymnastics gym for their team during the year because they didn't have enough room or time for their team, given their other facility demands. So I don't see why there can't be some reciprocity, but they would have to find that out amongst their colleagues.
Mrs. McCune.
Oh, sorry, hold on. I just pushed the wrong thing. Can you hear me? You're glitching out. I agree with what Ms. Schaefer just said, and I would hope that you guys can follow up tomorrow with Mr. Shallow to see if there's a possibility. And I'm all for trying to make Aramark, you know what I mean, pick up the cost of if we can find another facility. I think, but also I would like to find out what this letter that supposedly talks about the warranty says. It might be too late as far as doing anything with the snow right now if it's that compacted, that a snow blower and a shovel isn't going to solve it now that there's so much snow out there. If it's really packed down, it might be too late for this snow, but I would like to know, what that, if there is a letter that says that about some kind of special shovel. But I think, I don't know that there's anything else we can figure out at this point tonight without knowing if either of those two things are a possibility. But I think we need to look into it tomorrow.
I mean, we invested a significant amount of time and resources into a plan and the resource and the on-site materials, the tarp and this tractor to clear this. It's a good plan if Aramark follows it. So I don't know that we have to change that, but what we are going to have to do is I guess I'm going to have to, really beat up on them for failing to do it. And, it's not the first time if those of you who've sat on the finance committee and know me know that it's not the first time that unfortunately we've had to do that with them, but I do it. And unfortunately, it's cold solace under the circumstances.
Well, and I don't think we wait on what, I mean, we're not going to get an answer or an agreement for anything with Aramark in time to do anything about it. So I think we just move forward with seeing if there's another option for them to practice, deal with Aramark later.
I think we move ahead on both fronts at the same time.
I agree. I see you, Mrs. Beckman. Just bear with me one moment. I just want to piggyback on that last comment and say that I also think it's time to really seriously reevaluate if there are other facilities contractors with whom we should be having some conversations, because this is a perennial problem. It dates back long before that giant snow that they took down the fence that shares the property line with Astor Field, and that laid there for months, that 12 inches of grass grew through it. And the same thing happened with the red rocks by the Lee Field slope. It's one thing after the next after the next. They do not maintain our grounds to the satisfaction of our contract. And,
well, to remind you, their contract and the renewal options for it expires in June. So,
okay,
you know, I'm in the
so
process of, and it's a protracted process, but working through with our consultant firm Advocate the request for proposal that will go out sometime in the spring to get proposals for contractors for the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mrs. Beckman had her hand up.
Yeah, so, okay, so we're stuck with this, or I think we should at least have Aramark check to see what the status of the snow is, and see if they can work it. And if they can't, how do we ensure that they follow their contract for the rest of this snow season? You know, their contract's up in June, but they need to do something now. And I agree with what Karen said a long time ago, or several people ago, is that it's been 8 days since the last snowstorm. And so why are we just hearing about this now, or why hasn't Aramark?
Well, in all fairness, we did have another 6 inches of snow over the weekend, if I remember correctly, right?
I didn't hear you.
I said no, it hasn't been 8 days. We had another 6 to 8 inches of snow just over the weekend.
Oh yeah, over this weekend. But what
Yeah.
about the original 2 feet of snow last Sunday night,
Right.
Monday?
Right.
So we've had 6 inches.
They probably weren't dug out. And listen, you know, we can have somebody come to the finance committee. I'll have Doug Marino, because they report to Doug. Okay, as our employee, Doug Marino. Kevin O'Reilly reports to him. I'll have Doug come to the next meeting prepared to talk about that in the finance committee, and the finance committee can report out on that. Finance committee meets next week, if I remember correctly. I think it's next week, or maybe it's the week. Yeah, next week.
So that people hire people to shovel their snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my next door neighbor, you know, 6 in the morning, there's a the snow guy coming up and doing it. He doesn't have to be asked. They have a contract, and every time it snows, they come and clean it up. And so that's what you have to have with Aramark, some sort of agreement that they'll.
Obviously, that is what we have, and they didn't do it. I think that's been pretty clear.
Well, and I think we have to look at exactly what the snow plan says relative to the timing of a storm, because I remember quite a few details in terms of how they were supposed to respond relative to the timing of the storm, what the priority is about getting school open before they get to the track, how much time they have to get to the track. So I think the whole thing we need to take a hard look at the whole thing, and at the same time see what we can do in the immediate. As Mr. McLaughlin said, you know, pursue both things. One is, you know, what happened? Why didn't this plan get executed? And two, what can we do to clear the track? And you know, we got to take a look at the surface itself and see if it's even possible to try using the snow blower on. We have to see what kind of condition it's in.
Right. I'll send somebody up to that independent of that, either John Perrin or Doug Marino to look at it. I'm not going to rely on Aramark's assessment of it at this point.
If the snow is pretty deep, maybe the blower could get a lot of the top stuff off without going all the way down to the bottom.
I'm pretty sure it's not. I saw the track. I just walked by it today, I think. And the kids were doing what they were told to do. They stomp it to try to get it to melt, but it's 2 feet of snow. I mean, when you stomp 2 feet of snow, it causes like it's like 4 inches of ice. You know, I mean, just that's just physics, I guess. And I'm not, you know.
That's what I'm worried about.
But that's not their fault. I mean, that's what they're
Nope.
told to do. And that tarp was never laid down. So, you know, I mean, it's like I feel like it's like a catch-22. Like there's nothing you can do to make it right almost. And you know, and I understand also that like our first priority with snow is to get the driveways and everything clear. And it wasn't about that. It was about actually just getting the tarp down so that eventually you can get the snow off. You know,
if I remember
before it snows. So I don't know how that would be really it's not about the snow removal. It's about what happens before the snow comes, I feel.
If I remember correctly too, the tarp is designed to cover like one side of the track.
100 yards, I think it is.
So it's not even half the track.
That's correct. Yeah, I think that's because we were going to experiment with it.
Right, exactly.
And then we never had, and after we got it, we never really had any big snowstorms.
Right. Yep.
Are there any other comments on public comment? Okay, our next item is board forum. Does anyone have anything for board forum?
That wasn't board
Mrs.
forum?
White.
I thought that was board forum.
Well, it kind of turned into it, but it was really a conversation after public comment. Mrs. White.
I just want to say, because I always feel sometimes we get to this point and the positive steps, the good news, whatever you want to refer to, has gotten lost. And I also sometimes feel that people submit their public comments before they've actually had a chance to hear whatever it is we're going to say or Mr. Markarian's going to say. And, you know, we are moving forward and we all should be, you know, happy that, you know, we have K in, we have first grade in, we have a date for second grade, we have a date for third, fourth, and fifth grade. There's a plan in motion. No, is it full days? No, but it's going to be delivering much more, you know, daily school to K through 5. And we have a plan moving forward to very shortly get grades 6 through 12 back in you know, for anyone who wants to send them to school. And again, no, it's not full day. No, it's not lunch. But again, it's so much more than what we've started out for, you know, this that we've had. And I don't want that good news to get lost and get muddied up and all the other stuff that comes up. And I kind of feel like that kind of went over people's heads, that we are making progress. And, you know, they've been saying, what's the plan? You don't have a plan. We have a plan. And the plan is we're moving into the next phase. I think that that's very important that people hear that we are moving forward. It may not be exactly what every single person wants, but it will be more school for any parent who wants to send their child in for in-person school.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Anyone else have something they'd like to add? Okay, I have something I'm going to read just to have it in the record because it's come up several times. I want the public to know that the board has been reading their emails as we always do, and that the board has put together a statement to address some questions regarding in-person Board of Education meetings. So I'm going to read instead of paraphrasing because it's too late. The Board of Education understands that relevant executive orders from Governor Murphy allow for in-person public meetings. However, based on advice from local health officials and the high level of the COVID-19 activity level index, the Board of Education believes that it is currently unwise to hold public Board of Education meetings in the Ridge High School PAC or any other space in our school buildings. The decision to keep the Board of Education meetings virtual in February was shared with the public at the January 25th Board of Ed meeting during the public forum portion of the meeting. It may help for the public to understand the following. The board is unified in not wanting to bring any unnecessary individuals, including board members, staff members, or members of the public into the Ridge PAC, which is being used by students daily for a public meeting that could potentially cause a COVID-19 exposure at Ridge High School. The board has agreed that the primary focus at this time must be getting all the K-5 students back to school 5 days a week and preparing to bring more 6-12 students back into the buildings as soon as conditions permit. The board is prioritizing the time and energy of our district administrators, technology staff, support staff, and custodial staff so that they may focus entirely on bringing students back to school and doing whatever is necessary to do so. Moving classrooms and furniture, hiring and training additional teachers, adjusting class sizes, setting up additional equipment. The board is aiming to avoid any distraction that might create delays in getting students back in school by directing valuable resources to plan for board meetings that need to accommodate both virtual and in-person environments. This effort entails working out logistics for simultaneous in-person and virtual attendance, setting up and cleaning the Ridge Pack before and after meetings, and fine-tuning the technology. The board intends to revisit this issue of in-person board meetings on a month-to-month basis. However, for the time being, the board will continue to ask the administration to direct all efforts toward making daily in-person school available to each child who wishes to attend. When that priority is met, the board will look to reinstitute in-person public Board of Education meetings. That's it from me. Does anyone have anything else? So I guess we're up to adjournment. Can I have a motion, please? Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Korn, all in favor? That's everybody, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.